Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another week of training. I'm Barry Schulhofer, Productivity Coach, Keller Williams Marquis. This morning, we're going to be doing buyer consult, buyer agreement. Ms. Sheila Riggs is going to take care of that, and that's 2 hours. We'll take a break or two somewhere in the middle, and then Ms. Pam Malta Tucker will step in, and she will do contract to close to finish our morning, and we should be out of here by about 4:30 this afternoon. I'm just kidding, probably 12 o'clock. So ready, set, and Sheila Riggs, you got it.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm glad you can join us for buyer consult and buyer agreement this morning. Who has, just quick show of hands, done a buyer agreement? Okay. All right. So we have some nods. That's awesome. We're going to go over step by step what we do when we have a buyer consult. And then after that, we'll talk about the buyer agreement and what you'll do, why, how to fill it out completely. Feel free to ask questions. I am not super awesome at reading the chat box. So feel free to unmute and ask questions, and then we'll take questions at the end as well. So buyer consults. Who can tell me why you want to have a consultation with your buyers before you start to show them houses? Anybody?
You need to find out what they're looking for and their motivation.
And safety purposes too.
Yes.
Absolutely. Both good reasons.
The amount of time you need to put into them up front.
Absolutely. We want to have matched expectations always. So sometimes you have someone who might call you and say, I love this house on 123 Main Street. Can you show it to me? And you're so excited to get a deal that you're like, yes, let's go right now. And then you get to 123 Main Street and you find out they're tire kicking. Maybe they're just nosy neighbors. Maybe they're buying next year. So before you say, and I know right now, especially when you're new, you're super excited to get somebody into a house. We're in a strong seller's market. So you don't want a client to miss out on a house. I get those things. At the same time, even if you can have a quick consultation with them before you show them the house, there's nothing wrong with setting something up and then going and seeing the house. If you can, I prefer to do it on a different day, you know, when you're not rushed. You won't feel like you're trying to get through this consult quickly and miss some steps. So when you have a buyer consult, this slide that you're looking at right here, buyer A is our highest priority buyer. These are the people that are buying now. These are the ones we don't want to miss out on the house. These are the ones that you want to make sure that they understand the competitive market that we're in. Either they've sold their home or they still have to sell a house, but they want to make sure that they're under contract for another house, sometimes before they list their house. These are your A buyers that you want to start talking to right away. I think it's funny. It says in some cases they could be homeless. Don't worry. You'll get them in a home. Buyer B, second highest priority. These are people who are ready to buy, but they're not in a hurry. Maybe they do still have to sell their house, and maybe it might take a little bit. Maybe there's some issues we need to fix first. If they have a lease that they have to finish fulfilling if they're renting, if they haven't been pre-approved yet. In this day and time, pre-approval is high priority. Buyer C, again, these are the people who, like I mentioned earlier, low motivation, right? They're the ones that are not in a hurry. They want to wait until little Cindy graduates at the end of this school year. But they want to look now because they want to gauge the market before they're ready in the next 10 months. So you want to make sure that you understand, that you understand why they are calling you to see a home. Give me one sec, guys, because again, I need a second when I'm sharing. All right, so when we have our buyer consult, one thing that I want to make sure that you have handy is a checklist for yourself. Give me one second. It's loading. This is available to you in Command. That's where you see that I have all these documents just under my sample for you so that you can see that you can get this and load it. You can print it out for yourself for each buyer so that you make sure that you hit all of these steps. It's really spelled out for you very clearly and helps you just go through things in the appropriate order. Then when you make an appointment with your client and you are going through your consultation, loading, again in DocuSign forms, this is your information checklist. So before you meet with your buyer, you can actually go into Command and you can fill these out if you would like and then print it so it's already all nice and neat when you're sitting in front of them. This is going to help you make sure you don't miss any questions that are important. I definitely bring a notepad with me so that I can take additional notes, or you're going to wind up writing all over the back of this too. So we're going to talk to them about the areas that they want to live in. Now you can look at this a couple of different ways. Sometimes people just want to live in a specific school district because they have kids and they know where they want them to go. Sometimes it is in reference to where they work, and maybe they live in or work for the city of Troy, so they're required to live in the city limits. So you need to know those kinds of things. If they just want to make sure that their commute is within 25 minutes of where they work, you can actually set that up in the MLS when you're doing a search for them. There is a tab with a map, and you can set up a time frame to say, it has to be within 25 minutes of this address during 8 a.m. driving. And then the MLS will give you those parameters. It'll be a really wonky looking outline, but that will tell you what their drive time will be at that particular time of day. So those are questions that you want to ask, not just, do you want to live in Edwardsville? Approximate possession date, because we all have our own timelines and we would never want to assume anything for anyone just because they're calling now and just because we know it's a hot market and you would think maybe that means that they're ready to go. We need to know when they're ready. If you have a client that maybe there's a divorce going on and they need to make sure that they're not taking possession until that is finalized. There's all kinds of different scenarios that might determine the date that somebody needs. Specifications. Always know what their dreams and desires are. This is the most important thing in the selling portion of our business, I think, is making sure that your expectations are matched in their dream. Because while you can never get somebody to fall in love with the house, if you make sure that your priority is showing them the right house, you'll hopefully be able to avoid showing them 43 of them and maybe be able to show them 3 or 8 or, you know, the minimal amount that you need to because you know their dreams. So getting the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, if they need a basement, lot size, if that's important to them, style, if they cannot do stairs because it's health prohibitive to them. Make sure that you know all those things. If there's features they love or hate, know all of that. Personally, I feel like some of these little spaces are not big enough. Again, why it's important to bring a notebook with you too. Or if you're digital, your tablet or whatever. A price range and how this price range was determined is extremely important. Do they have a pre-approval yet? If not, ask them if they have a lender they trust that they want to go through and they just haven't yet, or if they need some referrals, and make sure that you have your preferred lenders. If they give you a price range and they go, oh, well, we already know how much we can spend, and we know that this dollar amount on, that price house fits in our budget. That's well and good, but a lender will determine what they're allowed to spend, not on what they think they can. So if their price range is just them doing figures on paper, make sure they understand the importance of the pre-approval.
Sheila,
Yes.
I just wanted to add, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
It would be a good idea at that time to say, do you have that letter handy and can you show it or send it to me? Because we ran into a problem here recently where the buyers misunderstood that they needed this cash at closing and they weren't going to have that for 2 or 3 months. And the agent, asked the right questions, but the buyer misunderstood, unfortunately. And so it kind of killed us. But that said, looking at the pre-approval letter, we can then see or talk to the lender prior to actually going out and putting in a contract and so on. Does that make sense?
And if you've not met that lender before, it gives you the opportunity to introduce yourself. If you know the lender, reconnecting with that lender, and letting all those lenders know that you're excited to work together as a team to help your client, your combined client. Thanks, Pam. I appreciate that. So yes, if you can get the letter, if they've got it have them bring it with them, or email it to you. What is their comfortable monthly mortgage payment, so that they understand that includes their taxes and insurance and potential PMI, so that they know that payment would be all those things together if they're escrowing. How much are they putting in the down payment? Again, like Pam said, that's great. You might already have that on the pre-approval letter, but then I always reiterate what's on their pre-approval letter, because I know that sometimes clients don't read all of those things. So if we can just reiterate whatever we're seeing on paper from their lender, we're making sure everyone's on the same page and where that money is coming from. If it's a gift, if because of their loan, they need to have that in their account for X number of days prior to closing, because sometimes that happens. So knowing where that source is coming from. And then when you talk to the lender, also making sure that you reiterate with the lender. So I talked to our client, this is what he and or she said, and making sure we all have matched expectations. Again, like I said, do you already have a preference, or do you need my referrals? Other than the maximum price that you're willing to pay, is there any other information that is confidential that you don't want me to disclose? Are there things you don't want me to talk about with anyone else? Honestly, everything's confidential. And so if there were something you, for whatever reason, felt like you needed to discuss with the listing agent, you should get permission on all of those things anyway. So, I mean, while this is important, just know that everything is confidential. And then, was the buyer representation agreement presented? Yes or no presented, executed, yes or no. We're going to talk about that in just one moment. We are going to get signatures, and then you have some of this information for you to fill out, just where the source came from. This will get information into Command if you don't already have it. Help you remember how they heard of you, or, where that source came from, how they found properties if they specifically asked you for something, and properties that you're going to show to them. That would be handy if you kind of have a generalized idea of what they're looking at before you meet them. This would be a place you could fill that out. Any questions? All right, so the Hannigan team, it's in your packet. Sorry, I don't actually have it pulled up on my screen, but the Hannigan team has put together I can't even remember how many pages are in this packet. It's many, many, many pages. It's extremely detailed, very pretty. Put together a buyer consult packet for you and or for their team and shared it with all of us. So it is in our PC program available to you. You can edit it and take Hannigan Team off the header if you are going to utilize it, or create your own and just use pieces of it. Like I said, it's extremely detailed. Definitely make sure you take a look at it, because it will give you more ideas of other questions that you will ask your clients when you're meeting with them. One thing that I always like to know when we're talking about some of those hopes and dreams that they say, well, we want a basement, but we don't need a basement. How important is that basement? Because we never want to infer how we feel about the words that came out of their mouth. So make sure you ask more delving questions and things like that. Sometimes you meet with a client and they want everything you could possibly get in a house, which is amazing if their budget allows it and if there's a house that meets that criteria available. However, we all know that those houses aren't always available. And sometimes if you can get 80 or 90% of your dream home, you'll still be more than happy to live there. So that's always one of those things to ask them when you're talking about what they want in a home is, Mr. Miss Buyer, if we can find 70% of the things on this list, what are 30% that you can live without? What are the top two or bottom two or three things that are not requirements? And what are requirements? What are those top three things that are absolutely non-negotiable? You absolutely have to have a ranch. It cannot have any stairs. That would be one of those top priorities. So you need to know all of those things too. So again, more digging questions. The more questions you ask, the better. It will give them more confidence in your ability to help them find the perfect home that they're going to fall in love with. Because again, you know, you can look at our job as a sales job, but you can never convince someone to buy a home. It's about just showing them their dream. And if you already know what those dream items are, that will make you much more successful. Questions? Okay, so we're going to move along to the buyer representation. So again, you're going to see there are two. We have an exclusive buyer representation with dual agency and without dual agency. I'm going to pull up with dual agency because without is just the same thing, only shorter. So does anyone know what dual agency is? Don't all chime in at once.
Where you represent both the buyer and the seller.
Correct. So do you know what that means? Pam, I know you know what that means.
Okay.
I do.
I won't
I do.
answer
I do.
that,
I do.
Sheila.
I know
I
Barry
do.
knows what that means.
Oh.
I think maybe Barry's done it a time or two.
Yeah.
So dual agency, when you are in dual agency with two parties, so you have the buyers and the sellers, that means you're representing both. You have a fiduciary responsibility to represent both sides to the best of your ability. However, that can be a conflict of interest. And one of the things you want to make sure you avoid, absolutely no ifs, ands, or buts. So this is going to spell all of that out. And you're going to go over this with a fine-tooth comb with them and make sure that they understand what you can and can't do should you end up in a dual agency situation, so that they can agree to it fully and without saying that they did not understand. So you're going to talk about this at the very beginning. So this is our buyer representation agreement. When you meet with your buyers, you want to make sure you get this signed. Again, this is all in command in DocuSign, so you can fill out these spots before you even meet with them, so it will look all nice and professional because it's all typed up. So Keller Williams Marquis up here at the top is our brokerage company. The next two lines here, well, it's one line, but when you're in command, it blocks it out in two in case there are two buyers. So this is where you put their names. Separately, I know that if you're writing it out, you might write Mike and Cheryl Smith, but this will actually say Mike Smith and Cheryl Smith, just so you know. We have two different types of agreements. One is exclusive representation. One is exclusive right to acquire. Do you guys know the difference between those two?
Yes.
Feel free to unmute. Barry?
I know.
Do you always sit in the front of the room?
Actually, you know what's funny? Because I keep hearing you ask questions, and I'm like, crap, I remember that.
I like participation.
I know. I do too. Boyd Jennings, come off mute, participate. Blake Holiday, come off and participate, please.
I've been talking. Can you not hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, no, I know the difference.
Okay.
And I don't want to skip ahead, but in this, if we could, I'd like to hear a little bit more about, in your presentation to the buyer, the more of the benefits to them to get them to that exclusive representation versus the right to acquire.
The benefits?
Well, I mean, for, we obviously, right, want them an exclusive rep to protect us in case they do go out through another agent, or you do all the work and then they call their buddy that's a agent, and then they, buy the house, that venue. Whereas from what I understand, exclusive representation protects your commissions from, if that situation occurs, where exclusive right to acquire is different, where that's not the case.
You have it backwards. Exclusive right to acquire is you will be doing the purchase for them. They cannot go to anybody else.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Exclusive rep means, right, that bottom line where it's underlined, buyer reserves the right to purchase on buyer's own without assistance of sponsoring broker or any broker.
Yeah,
so that means they can't go to another broker, but they can decide, well, I'm going to do this by myself.
Correct. Like for sale by owner situations. That's one of those that you want to make sure that they're not just calling a sign in a yard as they're driving by.
So one of the first things I ask a buyer is, and I ask it like this for a reason so that they get what you guys are all talking about. I say, say Sheila, you're my buyer. Be like, hey Sheila, by the way, has anyone explained how agency and representation works for you in the state of Illinois? And I'm telling you, 10 out of 10 go, no one's ever told me that. And then you can go right into what you guys exactly are talking about. Here's this paragraph, here's this paragraph, and then have them choose.
And there's a form that explains it for them.
Yes. Yep.
There's a state form out there that explains buyer relationships between client and agent.
Correct.
And in the state of Missouri, if we have Missouri agents on here, that is a form that you were required to have them initial per Missouri standards. And it explains the services offered by each brokerage. And if we do offer, and how relationships work.
Yeah, I have one of those too. I have like a one that just says, has all the agencies. So you can use it for seller, buyer, or whatever, if you're doing dual. Yeah, kind of like that.
Where's that form at, Barry?
Should be in DocuSign. I'll have to look and get the actual number.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't actually remember where that one is either.
Okay.
I got it.
I don't
You looking it
remember.
up, Pam?
I'm taking a look right now for you.
Okay, thanks,
Okay.
Pam.
You're welcome.
Pam just happens to have multiple screens up.
I do. I have 3.
I was
I'm
actually used to, I'm sorry, a little different verb. When they teach this stuff, exclusive right to sell listing versus exclusive agency listing. I got some things turned around there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
Hey, dude, that's why we're in this class. That's why we go through this and talk about this, so you guys have clear understanding.
And that's why
So-
we want you guys to talk when we're in this class. Because if we were doing this in person, you guys would all be talking. So we don't, I think that's maybe a little bit of a downfall to the Zoom calls, is everyone thinks they have to be quiet. But if we were in person, we'd all be chatting. So this is great. Thank you.
One other question I may, I know these are probably more rare than the others, but if you get into the open listing agreements and the net listings, where does that all fit in with this, that we're, with the buyer agreement?
Open listings or net listings? I'm not sure I understand.
Well, again, I'm just going off what these courses talk about. I think that the open listings where the seller retains the right to employ any number of brokers that they want as agents.
Yeah, that's what that term means.
And then the net listing is, I guess, where they, the broker's freed off of the property any price greater than the net amount the seller wants.
That's correct.
But
Okay.
this is just for you representing your buyer.
Right. Okay.
So then here,
I know where Blake is in his 45-hour post licensing
gotcha.
training.
So here is where your name goes, because this is where you are their designated agent. I actually just had a client ask me what happens if he signs this and then, heaven forbid, something happens to me and I'm not around anymore. This document is what covers that I'm his representative. If I'm not around, this is only for that. He was worried that, I don't know why somebody would think about this. Should I be in a car accident and die? Is he bound to whoever the office would assign him to? So by my name being in there, this makes he and I only in contract. So horrible. Nobody's ever asked me that before.
Well, I know, right? You can add someone in there too. Like if you have a partner.
Correct.
Like
If you're on
as
a team.
manager, sometimes, well, as a transaction manager, sometimes I'm not available to run out and open a door or whatever. So sometimes I partner up with an agent and say, these will be both your agent, both of us will be your designated.
Correct. Yes.
That's not how I have understood it. So you're saying that if something were to happen to their agent, they can then go to any other brokerage and get another agent?
No.
No,
Okay.
but he was worried he would just be bumped to anyone without any of his say-so.
Which is the broker's right to do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the contract is really with the brokerage.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So if you put someone else's name in there or your own, then he knows that he's not going to be bumped randomly, like a pool.
Okay.
Okay, so next section. This actually gives an end time to this contract potentially. The first one is the one you're going to use almost, depending on what kind of buyer you have. So if we're in a residential land deal, this is where you'll fill in. It will be effective until 11:59 p.m. on X date when it shall terminate. The contract is irrevocable, can be terminated prior only by written agreement of the parties. And this also says if within X number of days after the termination of this contract, you're still going to get paid. So if you show Mr. Smith a property and he finds out, because some of us are in small towns and this happens, he finds out that that seller is maybe not happy with their agent. So when that contract expires on his listing, which maybe is right around the corner. Maybe this is the scenario. It's right around the corner. The contract is expiring next week. He's counting down the days. And through the grapevine, these two guys have mutual friends, and your buyer finds out that Mr. Seller is going to be going for sale by owner for whatever reason when his contract expires with his listing. And they've had a discussion and said, this will save us money if we wait until that happens. So, so they've chatted, they've kind of formed this plan. This covers you, that you showed him this property already, and within whatever days you write in, 30, 60, 90 days after this contract terminated, he's still going to have to pay you. Make sense? So the next one is, correct me if I'm wrong, just for commercial real estate, correct? Yes, Alicia? Okay. And so if you're doing commercial, which I personally never do, so I don't use this part, it renews on a specific day. So if you're working with someone who's buying commercial property, and they're going to just keep looking for more properties, this auto renews, so you don't have to worry about that.
Hey, Sheila.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to keep interrupting you.
No, it's fine. I can't hear you, Pam.
Do that with me at 11.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. On the buyer agency, where the one where it says my internet connection is really bad, so I apologize.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that does, be careful with that, because don't think that protection paragraph protects you from procuring cause. A lot of times agents think that paragraph, you can go after the agent who wrote the contract and whatnot. Just keep in mind that
Oh, we lost you again. Okay, I don't know where Pam went. Alicia or Barry, do you guys know where she was going with that?
Yeah, what she's talking about is Illinois is a procuring cause state, which means that whatever actions facilitated the sale, sometimes that's just you showed them the house, they want to write a contract. Sometimes that's I'm the agent that showed them the house, but Sheila's the one who did all the work of calling the agent, getting stuff set up, trying to make sure the taxes were right. And it's whoever did the more work.
the brokerage and the buyer, I'll type it.
It's okay, for sale solidification. So that's what she's talking about, is that I think we had a scenario like this a few weeks ago, right, Barry? Somebody showed the house and then one of our agents.
We run into this on a regular basis. And what you have is you have some of the brokerages out there are really hardcore about this. And so what happens is they don't sign a buyer agreement with a client, and they go out and they'll show them 2 or 3 properties and never get a buyer agreement signed. And then the client doesn't know about the buyer agreement, and they go out on Zillow and they happen to call you because maybe you're their premier agent covering the area. And next thing you know, you're showing them the same house, or they'll call you and say, hey, write the contract because I didn't really like that other guy. And the agent that had been working with them now takes you to arbitration because he says he was procuring cause and he deserves the commission. And although you got the buyer agreement signed, sealed, and delivered and wrote the contract, what ground where do you go down that road? So that's where we run into those issues all the time. And that's why we tell you, as soon as you meet with a client, before you take them out the door, you have a consult with them and you have them fill out and sign the buyer agreement. That way there's no question who's getting paid on this deal. Now, what we have had to do recently, we had a couple of issues. I was on the phone about it this morning. As a matter of fact, we have an agent who has to pay a 25% referral to a small brokerage because that broker had shown the house a couple of days prior. The people never signed a buyer's agreement with him. And what they do, they called this agent and said, hey, will you write the contract for us? Because, you know, we like you. And she actually never took them to see the house. So how we got away from it was she's paying that brokerage a 25% referral.
I have a personal opinion about that. If you're not a good enough agent though to try to get that buyer agency agreement after that first showing, that's on you. That's my opinion.
And
but
that was my argument. That was my argument. But I went with Anita because Anita knows best. And that was Anita's just here. This is a lesson learned for an agent. Let her pay the 25% referral because she forgot to ask her, you working with another agent?
Right. We do always train to that. Other offices, just so you guys know, if you don't know me yet, I came from another office before Keller Williams, and other offices definitely do not train on this. I never did this. Well, I won't say never. I almost never did this form before Keller Williams because the office I came from, I mean, they talked about it a little bit, but it wasn't required. And so there are a lot of agents out there that have no idea what this form even is and how important it is to have it done preemptively, not the day you show a house. And just like Alicia and Barry were saying, it's so important to make sure that your clients matched expectations, that they understand what this means. And so many people have no idea how agency works. They don't know that you can show them houses from other offices. They don't know that you can show them for sale by owners. They don't know that you can show them a foreclosure. They think you'd be surprised how many people think you can only show them houses that your office has listed. So they will go down the street and they will call every agent on every sign.
I actually was hired, and I always tell my clients, this form is a contract between me and you are hiring me to help you acquire a home.
Yes, I am your
that's
agent.
A short, sweet answer. But I actually picked up a buyer last fall, and I ended up selling them a house because the agent they were working with before me would only show houses listed by their brokerage.
Oh yeah, that happens.
I can only show you the houses by our brokerage.
License law. Yeah.
But you know why? That's because there are managing brokers out there that encourage shared sides. So if someone else in that office that they work for also is the listing agent and you're the buyer's agent and you work for the same company, there are managing brokers that give you a better split for that, for keeping it in the office.
They'll give you 3 each side.
Mm-hmm.
They'll give you 3 each side or 2.5 out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's
why that happens.
One of the things that I was starting to say, and I hate my internet, but I had a buyer that I had written 2 contracts with, and $300,000 price range. And I'd been working with her for 8-9 months. She went and saw an open house. Obviously I'm not procuring cause for that, but at the same time, I had written, I think 2 contracts that she backed out of, and I had, a buyer agency, and guys, we're talking $10,000. That's a ton of money for 8 months of my time, right? Okay, so I didn't know what to do with it, because I had it that I was going to have to go to arbitration, but I found out, this is how I found out that you don't go to arbitration. You don't go after the agency that sold them the property. You go straight to the buyer and listen here, this is a contract. You said you were going to pay me. And guess what? I got an attorney. He wrote her a letter and she paid me. Mm-hmm. And one of the problems was the agent told her that, oh yeah, Pam, yep, we'll split that with Pam. We know Pam real well. Don't worry about it. We'll pay her. They actually told her that. And she told him that she had a buyer agency, and the agent told her, yeah, we'll pay her, no problem. And she ended up getting her money back because she went to the agent and told them. So it's kind of a mess, but be careful what you're explaining to the buyer. I just call it straight out. Hey, listen, if you go to an open house, guess what? Tell them you got an agent. Here's my card.
Mm-hmm.
That way you guys are covered. I mean, people just do not understand how this works. And the only person that can explain it to them is you.
Yes. Actually, I did a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks ago, I did an open house with Tyler, and someone came in and we asked, do you have an agent? And this lady said, kind of. And we said, okay, what does kind of mean? Because you have one or you don't. And she said she talked to someone, but she doesn't like her and she doesn't plan on working with her. So make sure that you get clarification.
I had that happen on my open house this past Sunday. I had 2 people come in and say, well, we worked with one agent, we don't like her, and she showed us one property. And I was like, okay, did you sign anything with her though? And they were like, no, I don't want to sign anything with her. And I was like, great, let's talk about the buyer agency agreement. And I always say, I want to make sure that you are the most ready, willing, and able buyer when you find the house that you want to buy. So what that means is, in order for that to happen, a buyer agency has to be in place, because I cannot get you into a house without this. And then I explain all the paragraphs and stuff. But that first part of ready, willing, and able is a big thing for them. So
Definitely. So good conversation, guys.
Can I ask something real
I
quick?
got a question.
Yeah.
Go
Go ahead.
Oh, which one? Yeah, my question is, like, you say that some agents and some agencies, they don't know to have this signed, but didn't they teach this, like, they taught us this in, like, the course before you even take the test to get qualified to become an agent?
Correct.
Unless that was just mine. So I don't know how you say you don't know that you need this signed, because they literally teach you this.
No, but
the course.
the office I worked at, they had a very specific checklist, and it said, these are the things you have to do. And this wasn't on there. And so you just, no matter what you learn,
that's their
what you
fault.
practice. And they didn't practice it. So
Yeah, and here's the other thing, Josh. Yeah, you're right. But how long ago did you take your test?
yeah.
Yeah, I just took my test like a month ago. So
Yeah. So here's what's going to happen 10 years from now. If we're not going over this on a regular basis and you don't do it, it just
yeah, I'll probably
becomes
forget.
You don't think about
fog
it.
in the back of your brain, and then you just forget.
Yep.
And that's what happens with a lot of these agents, because remember, a lot of these agents have been licensed for 20, 25, 30 years.
Easy killer. Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at this. I see one at the bottom of the screen. It's got a 25 plus on her. But
yeah, I can
there
see
are some of these agents that have been, I mean, they were glamour shots in the 80s, bud. If you look at their headshots, man,
It's still their picture.
that's still their picture.
Amen.
So
also,
what they get
All right.
lazy, right? Realtors are lazy.
oh yeah.
Well, and you do what your managing broker is the example for. So whatever your managing broker sets the example of, which is why Keller Williams is so awesome, because we have great example setters and we reteach and reteach and reteach.
Plus, to remember that buyer agency is relatively new, okay, from this old dog, let me tell you. You know, when we started in real estate, everybody represented the seller nationwide. It wasn't really even a state thing at that time. And so when buyer agency came about, you got these old farts like me who were like, buyer agency, what? Let the buyer beware, blah, blah, blah. And so you also have that element going on where they're not wanting to, I don't think it's like a purposeful thing at all. You know, they do have to follow the law, but I do believe it's a, what's the word? Conditional thing, like where they've just been conditioned. And you'll know an old dog when you hear them say something like, well, you know, the seller this and the seller that, and beware. If you're representing the buyer, those are like two of the worst words you could say, the seller. The buyer doesn't care about the seller, you know. And I had to really recycle myself. Yeah, years of representing the seller, years. So just FYI, that's some of them brokers are a little
Yeah, that. I was gonna say that makes sense because yeah, like you said, things constantly change in this industry, and you have to keep updating yourself on the information. So that makes sense. All right.
I got a few questions actually.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, I'm not crazy. I promise. I'm trying to get my daughter on Zoom all morning. I think made my brain mush.
Oh, sure.
But to back up to before on these buyer agency agreements, I have no idea why in God's name I was talking about listing agreements. But the exclusive buyer agency agreement that you're taught is the exclusive representation that's on this contract here. And then the exclusive agency buyer agency agreement that they teach you is actually the exclusive right to acquire part. But there is what they call an open buyer agency agreement. And I'm sure that's very rare if it even, I assume it still exists. But if there's an open buyer agency agreement where there's a non-exclusive representation that permits the buyer to enter into agreements with like an unlimited number of brokers, where does that, I don't see anything like that on this form as an option.
There is a non-representation agreement. So
Okay,
that
it's separate.
is another agreement you can sign. Or
Okay.
you can sign with them.
Now, what percentage, approximately in, so like in the homes that, or the buyers that contracts you have are exclusive rep versus exclusive right to acquire versus open buyer?
I have never done an open buyer agreement.
I wouldn't think so. Okay.
But that also, hey Blake, but that also goes back to the older agents. We had an agent in my former office. She was an older agent and a big hitter, big. And her theory was, I'm not going to force anybody to sign anything that puts them in a contract with me. They should, I'm taking it out by my merits, by who I am as an agent. They'll be loyal to me. And, she was right. So if I was going to give it a percentage, I'd probably say maybe less than 1%.
Okay.
And
what
that's
about exclusive rep
IAR.
versus right to acquire?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Excuse me. That form that she was talking about is an IAR 349, and it clearly states that you're not representing the buyer and that they're able to go shopping wherever they want to. But in this day and age, the odds of them doing that is pretty high. So if you want to protect yourself and your business, it's in your best interest to make sure that you're contracted with contracted with
Right.
With a buyer,
And then what about the exclusive rep versus right to acquire percent wise? From what?
I don't have percentages on those.
Me neither.
So you do both. I mean,
No.
No, I don't have percentages, but I would recommend a right to acquire because that's covering you. That means they're not going to go to the for sale by owners, and they could, but you're under contract this way against those things.
okay. And then on section 2 there, where it talks about if within blank days after termination of this contract, I think I've gone through this in another presentation before, but what generally is that time frame? Is it 45 days?
I put 90 days in. I think everybody just has their own time frame.
Okay.
I put 6 months in.
Oh, wow.
Typically, I go with 6 months on mine as well.
And I also do my buyer agencies for a full year. Saying.
Yeah, I think it's all scenario based and it's based on that client. There are clients I've actually done non-exclusive rights with, non-exclusive right to represent. When I was in the land business, because I wasn't sure if I really wanted to work with the guy or not. I'm serious. I would do a non-exclusive. And I would show him a piece of land that I had listed because I was going to be a dual agent. But if I wasn't sure if the guy was like, and I really didn't trust the guy or wasn't sure, I would do a non-exclusive. You can always flip that to an exclusive after you get to know them, but at least you're covered on the showing of your property. And I would do that out in Missouri. I did a non-exclusive a couple times and then flipped it to an exclusive after I got to know the person. But at first they rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm like, "Yep, I'm going to get paid, but we're going to do a non-exclusive." So it's all scenario based.
Okay.
Top question. When are you supposed to have a non-exclusive agency disclosure on you at all times?
At an open house.
Barry, you were not the student. Oh my
I am the student.
God.
I'm learning stuff all morning.
Barry.
Hey, so the question is, who actually has them?
I do.
Well, I know you do.
What was
You're
the
I can honestly say I've never taken one to an open house with me before.
Well, that will change today now, won't it?
It will, yes, absolutely.
But
Put
boy,
it in
that's
your
why.
binder.
Here's what happens. You don't have to have anybody sign it, but there are agents out there, and Anita talks about this all the time, that they clearly don't make enough money actually doing real estate. So what they do is they go around and they screw everybody else out of making money to do real estate. And they will shop your open house. I've had it happen twice. And they'll ask you all the questions, and you'll start noticing that they're shopping you because they start asking you very like specific questions. Like, well, do you represent me? I can, but we need to talk about a buyer agency agreement. I'm happy to set that appointment up for you, that kind of thing. But that's when you're going to be sneaking out that no agency, no representation disclosure and say, we have this on hand just in case people show up with agents or have questions just like yours. Don't tell me anything of your personal information yet because I don't represent you, and whatever you tell me I can use against you, like that kind of thing. So
Okay.
Yep, carry those with you.
Yeah, thanks. I definitely will for my
Which
end.
form are you? I can't hear. What? I didn't hear what form you're talking about. You just talking about this form here?
The non-exclusive.
Oh, okay, non-exclusive. Okay.
All right.
I carry all the forms with me. I know that's really weird and old school, but you never know.
I don't think it's weird. I like to always have paper on me all the time. So I think that's perfectly normal. I have separate folders in I call it my go bag. I've got folders for everything.
Alicia and I can both attest to a little trick I told her, which is carry every form in a binder with you wherever you go. Mine's right here beside me too, Alicia. I know you're pulling yours out. It saved Alicia over the weekend, last weekend. I think you actually wrote a contract hard copy, didn't you?
Yep, 2 of them.
And Monday morning, I wrote one by hand, hard copy, because I had the forms with me.
So what I did, guys, is I went on Amazon. It's $10. It's a little clipboard, right? And bam, it's in there. You just keep them all in there, whatever you
All of
need, ready to go. And it's got a little pen case. It's awesome.
I went to Walmart and I paid $0.25.
And I
I
have
bought-
one Alicia
no, really.
has only in red.
I went to Walmart, paid $0.25, and then I got some page protectors, and I put the contracts in or all the paperwork in, and I carry it in the seat pocket behind the driver's seat of my truck. So if you ever need a contract and you're with me, you know where it is.
What's also really cool is if you have that document in there, you can pre-fill out all the stuff that's like supposed to be your name and Keller Williams and all that. So you're not having to handwrite a lot of it. So,
And also, you know, a lot of people don't think of it. It's kind of cracked me up the other day when the agents that I'm working with, she called me up and she's like, what is this and what is that? And I can't even remember what the form was. And I had my stuff with me, and I did not have my computer with me, but I had my paper, and I whipped that sucker right out, and I was like, this is what the contract says, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, how do you know that? And, you know, I go, well, you know, I'm that good. And then I started laughing, and I had to admit my guilt of, you know, I carry my docs and whatever. And she's like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And I said, nah, you got to carry everything with you, because you have to be ready at a moment's notice. You have a buyer call you and say, hey, Pam, I forgot what it says on the contract about this or that. You got to know. You got to know. You know, so it's that too. Like, you can always look like a prepared person, you know.
Okay, so we have like a second left of this call. But awesome conversation. This is great. So we're just going to skim. You guys are capable of reading these things. So we're going to go through this. These are your agent duties. These are your sponsoring broker duties. Section 5 is the buyer's duties. So make sure you go over, again, matched expectations. Spell these things out. It's good to talk about these things. Sometimes you're like, oh gosh, they don't want to hear me say all this stuff. But if you don't, that's exactly when you get caught up in a sticky situation, because they say, he or she didn't tell me that, even though they're signing this piece of paper. So you just want to make sure, matched expectations. Section 6, representing another buyer. If you have two buyers competing for the same property. So you want to make sure that they know what all of this is. Disclosure and consent to dual agency. This is a lengthy section. Like I said, if you have a buyer that says, absolutely not, I want you all to myself. And so either I'm not going to look at any properties that you have listed because I don't want to be in that situation if they want to sign a no dual agency, or you refer it out. So then in that case, you can give that buyer to another agent in our office and get the referral fee on it if they do not want dual agency. So make sure that you're spelling all of that out for them and what that might look like should you end up in a potential dual agency situation, so that they could still buy a house you have listed and not worry about not being represented fully. So this is what we cannot disclose when acting as a dual agent. They're going to initial these. So again, why you want to really talk about this. What compensation is, and you're going to fill this in that, say for example, you're showing a for sale by owner, and that owner, that seller, is not paying buyer's agent commissions. This is where you're putting in that should we find that house, this is what you're going to be responsible for, so that I still get my paycheck. So next, previous representation, failure to close. We don't have time to talk about all these things. But make sure you're reading through all of this. Non-discrimination, of course. Yes. Yeah.
Take the time you need. You got 2 hours.
Okay.
If it's
All
important, cover it.
It is, but I'm worried about staying on time. Okay. So, so we'll go back to previous, yeah.
No, Sheila, take your time. I got the 11 o'clock hour, so I'm donating.
Well, we're talking about the actual offer next, and that takes time too. So, so I don't want to bump you either.
No, you're all good, sis. I got you.
All right. So, previous representation. This is spelling out for them what that means, and that if they have previously, or if you have previously represented the seller, you know, that they want to buy this property, that if I was selling a property and now for whatever reason, maybe I'm not representing that seller anymore, or maybe I still am if it's a dual agency situation, that I can't tell them things that I know that the seller has said. If they've agreed to dual agency, they've said, you can say these things, but you cannot say these things. And so that the buyer understands that even though you're representing them, there are things that are confidential and that you are going to stick to that. And hopefully they'll respect you for that. Because you're making sure you're explaining to them that you're holding that confidentiality, that you're going to do the same thing on their behalf. Failure to close, if the closing doesn't happen, that the buyer then does not have the obligation to pay you, so just so that they understand that, because they don't. Again, never make assumptions that they understand those things. Disclaimer, that they are being retained as your real estate professional, but that you are not an attorney. You are not, unless you are, you're not a structural engineer, because they will ask you those things, that you are not a plumber, that you're not an electrician. My favorite phrase is, that is beyond my area of expertise. So let's get the proper professional in to answer those questions for you. So write down, that is beyond my area of expertise. This is not what I'm doing for you. You hired me for this job. So that they fully understand that. Go over that. Third-party services, so that they understand that surveys, inspections, appraisals, that they understand that all of those things are in addition to the commission, since you just talked about commission before, that they know that those are separate and fees that they will have to pay. This next section, whew, man, guys, talking really fast. Stop me if you have questions. Indemnification of sponsoring broker, so section 13. This is a hold harmless. So that anything that comes out of the contract, the collection of fees, the commission due, that these are the things that are, oh goodness gracious, I've lost my words, guys. That if there is misconduct on our part, sorry, guys, chat, I'm so bad at chat. Oh, I can't see it anymore. There it goes. Chat.
I was just saying, you know, if you were to behave, you already said it right as I was
Thank
typing.
you. Yes.
Were to say things that are not correct, you can't hold the agent or the broker.
Yes. Thank you. Let's see. Whew, my brain just went on override just trying to cram it all in, guys. So assignment by buyers. This is that no buyer's interest, our assignment of rights in real estate obtained by the buyer pursuant to this contract shall operate to defeat any of the sponsoring broker's rights. So nothing that we do in this contract can override our brokerage rights in this deal. Does that make sense? Pretty self-explanatory. Any questions? I just talked really fast, guys. Obviously, non-discrimination, we talk about this a lot. So we cannot discriminate based on anything, and this will spell that out completely. We cannot try to, those of you who just went through the class know this, we cannot lead someone to live in a particular area because we believe it's a better location for them based on something that you perceive. That is all discrimination. So never letting your brain, if it's crazy thinking, get in the way. So modification, there's no modifications to this contract. This is binding as it is. Electronic signatures, because obviously we do that a lot. So there are electronic signatures potentially on this, and PDF copies of the same will be filed and effective as actual signatures. Recording within the property. So you guys, I'm sure, have talked about this in the class. This happens a lot where you're with a client and the selling agent did not take pictures of every cool detail that they think they want to make sure that they remember. And they'll say, can I take a picture of that tray ceiling? Can I take a picture of the alcove in the bathroom? They cannot record or take pictures without written permission by the seller. It says they should speak with an attorney. Most of the time when you're telling a buyer, yeah, we really just can't take pictures, they'll just say, oh, okay. So just make sure that you let them know in advance, and then it puts the kibosh on them asking that when you're in a house. Making sure
As
that
can I hit this one real quick?
yeah,
That recording, that's a big deal, because how many times have you taken somebody in the house and the first thing they do is pull out the iPhone and start snapping photos or videoing? They're not supposed to without written permission. I tried to do a virtual showing with an agent a couple months ago, or on a house, and I simply called and asked the listing agent, hey, can I do that? Nope. You will need to get written permission from the seller before I will allow you to go do a virtual tour or a virtual showing of that house. So before you go out, make sure that you tell your buyer that we can't snap pictures.
right. And not only that, that they also know that it's possible a seller could be recording them. So you want to make sure, this is very important, to make sure that you're talking to them about what they may say when they're in before you even go into the houses. This prevents them from, not that you don't want to squash them being excited while you're in a property, but at the same time, if they might be recorded, and then you wind up in a negotiating position where now the seller has heard them say, I don't care how high we have to go, we're going to get this house. So just cautioning them up front that this is very important, to make sure that they watch their words, and we'll have conversations away from the house if it's a recording situation. Questions about recording, because that's a big thing right now, even at the front door before you even unlock it, if there's a Ring doorbell, out of the car, if the car is parked close to that front door. This is a section that's a big reality right now. Anything? Okay.
Hey, we talked about this too, folks. This is also, recording as a whole is a big deal, right? We talk about that with open houses. We talk about that with showings. We talk about the seller's recording. Guys, you know what the easiest thing to do is? A baby monitor sitting in a room that's turned on can be a recording device, can be a listening device. Just
they can be sitting right next door. I showed a house last weekend, and there were a bunch of people across the street sitting at picnic tables. And my buyers, we got out of the house, we saw that they had devices around the house. They had a Ring doorbell, so we knew it was potentially being recorded. So we got outside, and they started talking, and they're loud talkers. And I said, you guys, like, we don't know who these people are that are sitting in the yard across the street. Like, you might just think it's the neighbors. Maybe it's not them, but maybe it's their best friends, you know? So you just want to be careful. Just caution them in advance, because you're signing this in advance.
Do you guys consider the Ring doorbell or okay, when I think surveillance system, I think like cameras around the house, cameras inside the house, motion detectors, things like that. Is the Ring or that kind of version now considered surveillance, like a surveillance system?
Can be.
I think it is, because they can literally be on their phone wherever, watching and hearing everything you say.
Yeah, I guess that's just really important to note, because even as a seller, you have to disclose that surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
And, so,
and people don't, and agents don't think about that.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Was there somebody else? I thought I heard another voice. Somebody else with a question? Okay. Again, section 19, like we said, this is a whole contract in its entirety. When we just talked about how it cannot be altered, it's just saying it's your entire, whether oral or written, have been merged and integrated, because you're discussing this. So just know that, watch what you say, make sure you know the right things to say when you're talking about this. We're close to the end, guys. So again, because this is in Command in DocuSign, you can pre-fill out these sections here. This is the section for your buyers and your buyer information. This is a section for our office because Anita has to sign this too. And you need to make sure that you get her signature right away. So you're putting it in an envelope in Command and that you are sending it to her for signatures after you get your buyer signatures on this. Make sure you do that immediately. Don't wait on that. So you're going to put Anita, it's going to say Anita Anthony, and then she's going to do her electronic signature right here in this space. And again, this is your buyer's names, their telephone numbers, their email addresses, and their signatures. No fax number. Okay.
Hey, Sheila, do you know what that bottom section's about?
This bottom section? Yes. So this is signing that all of your text messages, your emails, all of these things are all going to the right locations.
And it's official. Correct. It's official communication.
Yes.
We are going to communicate with you electronically.
Can I clarify that a little bit more? So
yeah.
That specific paragraph has nothing to do with you as the agent. It has everything to do about Keller Williams communicating with the agent. Correct. Earlier in the contract, there's a paragraph about just the agent specifically doing it. So they added this in because, just so you guys know, there was a whole tiff about, well, my relationship with my agent ended. Well, that relationship with the brokerage did not end because, like Pam said earlier, the brokerage is the person who owns the contract, not the agent. The brokerage is designating you to perform the actions needed on behalf of the brokerage. So this is just saying that the brokerage will also contact you.
Correct. And that's why in this space right here, you have Keller Williams and not your name. Questions? Nothing? Man, that was really fast.
Great job.
What I missed. I had a phone call, Sheila. What I missed?
What's that?
I said I had a phone call. Sorry, what I missed.
Right. Oh, what was that?
Hit it. You're good.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought I heard you say something. All right, guys. So welcome to the purchase agreement section of our training today. I hope you guys are excited. There's a lot we're going to talk about. Primarily the parts of the contract. We're going to talk about the different types of contracts. We are going to complete, well, not complete. We're going to go through, I'm going to tell you how to complete a contract. And we're going to talk about what additional forms accompany the contract. So first of all, again, this is all in Command. So I like you to see that this is easy to pull in from DocuSign. If you're using DocuSign, you can add all of these right here in this top section. I number them because they're going to be listed in numerical / alphabetical order. When you upload those, they're not going to be in this order for you when you do. I just give them little numbers so that we walk through this class to make it a little bit easier. So we just finished talking about what happens when you're having that consultation with your clients. Part of what we talked about was that maybe you're doing a for sale by owner. Should that be the case, before we get into the actual contract, I just wanted to point out that there is a one-time showing agreement because I think that this gets overlooked a bit when I've shown for sale by owners, and I know they've had it on the market for a while, and then they tell me they've never seen this before. That makes me worry about what's going on out there. So this is a one-time showing agreement between you and your prospective purchaser, and just making sure that all of this is spelled out with the signatures of the owner of the property. And your managing broker is going to sign off on this also. So this is one of those documents like we talked about. You want to make sure you send to Anita and get her signature on it too in DocuSign or .loop. So you're filling in the address of the property. Again, you're seeing these squares because we're in command. So you can have this all pre-filled out, makes it much easier, and you're not having to do that in front of anybody. And you can send this to your for sale by owner so that you can get their signatures. We have our agency in there and DocuSign. Yes. It is in this is in DocuSign to get this filled out. If you're using .loop, it's not going to be, you can't pre-fill this out. Is that what you're trying to, was that what your nod? Yeah, Alicia?
No, you can fill it out in .loop.
In .loop? Are you
Yeah,
saying that just in DocuSign?
No, you keep saying it's in command in this specific.
Sorry.
DocuSign.
Yes,
It's
DocuSign.
okay. I just want to.
Like, what is she saying?
No, it's okay. You just keep saying it is in command. Yes, you have to go to command to go to
Yes,
DocuSign.
but it is in DocuSign. Thank you. Okay, so property address, agency, granting the broker, so you, permission to show the property and the price that your for sale by owner told you when you called them in advance to set up the appointment. So that again, everything is agreed upon at that dollar amount. If the seller agrees to sell the buyer, to the buyer, if you wind up with a contract, this is where you put in your commission total and the commission of whatever that dollar amount will be payable to the sponsoring broker. It's understood that this is within X number of months. So whatever your particular date is that you choose to enter in here, personally, I do 6 months from the date that we're signing this, that this agreement is in place should your buyer decide to buy this property. These are your buyer's names, and then the signatures of the owners, and again, your signature, managing broker signature. So like I said, make sure that Anita's signing this and the date. Questions? It's pretty simple, straightforward form. I just don't want to make, I want to make sure you guys don't miss it if you're doing a for sale by owner. Okay, so we're going to go into the contract to purchase land. And we're not going to go through all of these, guys. There just isn't enough time. But I just want to make sure that you know that there are different kinds of contracts for different kinds of purchases. Loading. So, contract to purchase land. And again, all in DocuSign. So you can fill this all out in advance and have everything ready to go for all of the information you know. Make sure that you're putting the address at the top of every page and the date at the top of every page. I hope that one day DocuSign makes it happen that this date can auto-populate into each one of these, because all 10 of these pages, I still, unless somebody knows something I don't, have not figured out a way to get that date to put in every page without me doing it manually. All right, so contract to purchase land. We also have a contract to purchase commercial real estate. So make sure that you know that that is a different contract than the contract to purchase real estate, that you're clicking on the right one to have your buyers sign before you even get started. So here, same thing. They look very similar. Just make sure that when you're, because these are all in DocuSign, so make sure that you're pulling the right one. So this one's going to say commercial, okay? Then the one that I believe most of us will use, is there anybody on here that does a lot of commercial property? I know Barry does a lot of land. I've done a few.
2 commercial contracts. That's
yeah, okay. So, yep, that's why I like to touch base on all of them. So then we have the contract to purchase real estate. So this is the one we're just going to go through. And loading. So when you are in DocuSign and you can fill in all of that information ahead of time, a lot of these things are already going to be filled in for you if you've put in all of your property information and you've put in the buyer, the seller, the listing agent, your information. These things will auto-populate, except like I said, the date, which blows my mind. Legal description. So what I like to do when I'm filling this out in advance is to have my MLS sheet either pulled up on the computer. Well, no, pulled up on the computer. You can have it printed, but it's going to be easier if you have it pulled up in another window because you can copy and paste all of these things right into your contract. So your legal description, I have the MLS page pulled up. And then I also, you know, where your tax ID is, and it's blue, so you can click on it. So it will open up the next window with all of the tax information. You can, again, copy and paste all of that information for the legal description right here into the contract. Your parcel number, so your tax ID, and then what county it's in, and then commonly known as, that's its regular street address, approximate lot size. So sadly, some listing agents do not have that on the MLS. Again, why I like to have the tax information pulled up because you'll have that there. If it is a mobile home, model number and ID number, I've personally never sold a mobile home, but for all other properties, if you're not, I make sure that I'm a blank filler inner. So I put a few little dashes, just a couple little dashes through this, just saying that you acknowledge that it's a space, that you are not filling in anything and didn't omit anything. Section 2 is dual agency. So you need to get your buyer's initials here if it's a dual agency situation. Next section is offer and acceptance. So this is your offer. It's not a contract until all the parties have signed it. And then that effective date because your buyers are signing it today, that doesn't make it the date. The effective date, and it's actually going to give a definition later on in here. The effective date is the date that it is signed by all parties. So that's what makes it an official contract. And it says it actually in bold, in capital, because that's not always understood. So effective date is the date that's finally signed. Tenancy, this is no less than 10 days prior to closing. The buyer will say how title is being taken. And I know you guys all just got out of the class, so you've talked about all the different forms of tenancy. Purchase price, this is the offer that you're making. This isn't necessarily the final number. We'll talk about making counteroffers later on toward the end. So this is the price that they're offering on the home. This is how much earnest money they're putting down. So you want to make sure you talk to your buyer in advance about what earnest money means, and that it will be applied to their mortgage at the end, that it is going to be deposited. That's this next line right here. Some people assume that it's just a check that gets held. But it is not. It will actually be deposited so that they know that whatever that earnest money amount is that they're agreeing to, that they know that's going to come out of their account. Please don't let your buyers get any surprises. So then this will be deposited within, so if you're saying 3 days, spell out 3, number 3. If it's a weekend, if you're doing this on a Friday, or a Thursday, and maybe your effective date, maybe your buyers are signing it tonight, the sellers might not sign it depending on the deadline you set for a couple of days. Make sure that you give your buyer enough time to get it to the title company, or if they're giving it to you and you're taking it to the title company, if they're mailing it, make sure that you have enough time that it's going to go in the mail. Make sure that you know that it's business days. If they, again, if it's the weekend, this has to be it's a good idea to put in 3 business days, just so that everybody is aware, so that there's nothing anybody misconstrues in what your deadline is. That's the last thing you want. Again, no surprises. So spelling it out, very important. All right, next line, surprisingly, is not a box to type in, so you're going to have to put it in at the end before you send your envelope to your client. You're gonna have to put a little text box here. This is where the title company, where it's being escrowed, or if it's Coldwell Banker, they hold the earnest money. So that's what's going to go in line 23, is who is getting that. Sometimes it's on the MLS, not always. If it's not, you want to make sure that you're actually calling the agent and asking who's holding the earnest money instead of just putting TBD. Fill in the blanks properly. It's an easy phone call or text message. Home warranty plan. So you've talked to your buyer about what a home warranty plan is, and that they have the option to ask the sellers to either provide it. So here you're checking the boxes. So if they're waiving it, if they are asking the seller to provide it, then you're going to check seller, or if they're going to buy it themselves because maybe the house is as is and the seller is definitely not. Maybe the agent's communicated somehow that the seller is not willing to do that. So you already know. But the buyer wants it anyway. So they can say that provided by the buyer. And this way the title company is going to know who to bill for that. What warranty company that it's coming from. Sometimes the listing agents will already have that spelled out in the listing. Sometimes it's up to your buyer to choose. So make sure I have pamphlets from different warranty companies so that they can be informed and choose a title company. Not to exceed the cost of whatever X dollar amount is. If the house has a pool or a hot tub and they want to make sure that's covered, make sure you're looking at that brochure from that warranty company or making a phone call and knowing what that's going to be, because those kinds of things are not automatically included in the home warranties. So you want to make sure that your buyer is getting the proper warranty for the kind of house and things that come with it. Questions? That's a lot. Okay, inclusions and exclusions. These items are items that you would assume come with the house because they're attached. Occasionally, you have a built-in bookshelf that grandpa built, but it's built into the wall. You would assume that that comes with the house. If the listing agent has already made it clear on the MLS that that bookshelf is not part of the property, you need to make sure that that is in this section. Things like, for whatever reason, maybe they're going to take the sump pump with them. You have the opportunity to circle those things here. Generally not. And that these items are excluded from the purchase. And then the bottom of every page, top of every page has to be addressed and has to be dated. And the bottom of every page has to be initialed. Every page, there's 11 pages. Make sure you do that on every single one. Closing in possession. So this is spelling out the date that your offer, that your buyers, and make sure you talk to them. Never make the assumption. I have actually, a couple of times, had been on the opposite side of an agent who puts in the date that she thinks is like, oh, well, we always close in 60 days. Make sure that you have spoken with your buyer and that your buyer has made the conscious decision that that's the date they want to close. Oh, good point. Yes, appliance, never make the assumption. Again, no assumptions, guys. If there's a lesson in here, don't make any assumptions ever. Don't assume that the appliances are included. It should be on the MLS. If they're included, they should be spelled out. I'm also surprised at how many buyer's agents will say, they'll write in the garbage disposal, and there is no garbage disposal. So caveat, if you're on the selling side and you sign that there's a garbage disposal included, now you just bought a garbage disposal. So make sure that you're looking at those details, that you know if there's a garbage disposal and if it's included or not. But never assume anything. So always, your appliances aren't in this section, but just as a little extra piece. So moving back to section 8. So your buyer has to be part of this process in determining when they want to close. Again, maybe they have a lease and they can't get out of that lease, or if they do, they're going to lose their deposit and an extra month's rent. Maybe they have 3 months still. So you need to make sure that that date is far enough out. Also, you might have a buyer that says, well, I want to close in 30 days. But, in the past, pre-COVID, that might be doable. But today, it most likely is not doable. So you also, in the last section, we talked about making sure that you're in communication with the lender and that you and your lender are working together for the best experience for your mutual clients. So you have to have spoken with the lender about potential closing dates. So you need information from both parties before you can fill in that number. And if it hasn't been talked about, you need to say, hey, we need to give your lender a call or shoot them a message, or however that lender communicates best and quickest, to make sure that the lender's on the same page before you and your buyer are signing off on this offer. That is extreme. It's important all the time, but I will say that with COVID, there are lenders that are so swamped right now. Interest rates are so low that they're doing a lot of refinancing. I actually had a lender tell me recently, because they were behind and our closing date kept getting pushed back, even though we were under contract for 60 days. And the lender was pushing the date back and pushing the date back. And I said, what's going on? We talked about this. You said 60 days was not a problem. And he said, listen, I have 500 clients right now to deal with. And I was like, well, that's not my problem, but you're making it my problem and you are disappointing your client. Pretty sure they're not giving you a good review online. But you'll run into those occasionally, not often, hopefully, thankfully. But making sure that everybody's on the same page on this closing date. And also knowing there's a lot of verbiage in this paragraph because there is a lot to know. It seems so simple, like, oh, we're going to close on this date. But knowing that this actually says, look, right here before, on or before. So reassure your buyer if they really want to buy in 30 days, but your lender's like, I just don't know if we can make it happen before 60. Like, we would love to. And a good lender will, if they're on top of things and if it can happen before and everybody's on the same page, buyers, sellers, lenders, title company, if everyone can make it happen earlier and everyone wants it to happen earlier, it can, because it's written clearly in here, on or before. So it doesn't have to be 60 or 90 days if something happens and it can happen earlier. Questions? Okay, good. So section 9.
Can I make a comment about that? Sorry.
Yeah.
So everything that Sheila said is very true outside of COVID, this COVID bubble that we're in. Just so you guys are aware, right now, I have a daily conversation with 2 lenders just to see from both sides. One's a banker and one's a mortgage provider. Right now, both title company processors and all lending parties are treating that closing date as a due date, as in, you will not be able to close until that date. So don't set the expectation right now that you're going to be able to close early. You need to wait, buddy, or else you will be setting them up for failure.
Correct. I never want them to, I don't want to overpromise anything. Does that make sense? You never want to say, you know, oh, you know, we'll make sure we're on top of everything on our side and we'll get this moving along, because you are only one piece in the puzzle. So let them know. I mean, if the stars and the moon and the planets align, sure. Could we maybe close early? But like Alicia said, this is the deadline. This is the due date. And they just know the title company, the lenders, everybody has to have everything done by that date. They're not obligated to move it along any faster. So you don't want to get anybody's hopes up and then have to disappoint. The last thing you ever want to do is have to disappoint somebody. But is it possible? Yes. And so just so your client knows, it's on or before.
Hey, can I throw something real quick in
Yeah.
here?
Mhm.
If you have to postpone closing, statistics show that the chance of actually closing, if you start doing amendments to extend, actually reduce 50% each time. That's scary.
Yep. Because people
So-
get disappointed and then they're frustrated and then they want out.
Under promise, over deliver.
Absolutely.
Under promise, over deliver.
Make that date further out. You know, pre-COVID, I would speak to lenders that would go, hey, we're the best lender to go with because we can get a closing done in 27 days. And I think, why would you tell people that? Like, that's so short. And why would you make that a selling point for your company that you can close fast? I want to close correct. So, right? Put that date out. It's not, you want to be right. It's better to be right than to be like, I'm Speedy Gonzalez of closers, you know? Is that dating me, Speedy Gonzalez? All right. So section 9 is all the ways that we are going to pay for this house. Most of the time you're going to have a mortgage loan. So you'll be checking this box here. And this is the amount, again, the reason you want not only the pre-approval, because sometimes that's an umbrella. It doesn't actually mean what's going to happen. Maybe something's changed lately because of all the things going on in lending. I have a buyer who starts with one lender, and then, you know, when you start searching for something or you start talking about something and then all of a sudden you start getting things in Facebook or pop-ups that are related to what you just talked about. So they were just talking to a lender and they got a pre-approval. And now all of a sudden, somehow they're getting all this information from these other lenders, and they talk to somebody else and they can get a better rate and they feel a better connection. Like, who knows what it is, why someone, you know, there are all kinds of reasons. So I had one that just felt a better connection, and so she changed lenders. So we had a pre-approval from one that said one thing, but then she was going with another lender and just hadn't gotten the pre-approval letter just yet. So you don't want to fill in this information about the percentage of the purchase price, that it's definitely 100%. Maybe the last pre-approval letter said that it was 95%, but this new lender says we can get them 100%. So make sure you're talking to the lender before you fill out this information as a concrete deal. Interest rate not greater than, right now they're so low, but your buyer may have a percentage in mind, like, wow, if something happens and interest rates change, I am not buying this if it goes over 4%. You need to know that that they're not willing to go higher than that. You need to know that information. Is that you, Pam?
Yeah, sorry. Some don't qualify over a certain percentage, and that
Correct.
goes right to what we were talking about. Get to know your lender and your pre-approval too, real quick.
Yes. Yeah, I am surprised at how many agents don't talk to their lenders unless they have to. I think all of this is a have to. You need to introduce yourself to the lenders immediately and make sure you're a team for your mutual client.
Yeah, agreed. Common practice in real estate is we run around putting out fires as
Mhm.
opposed to proactive. I'm more of a proactive kind of girl.
Absolutely. Why do I want to put out fires? Like, some things in life are chaotic enough. Why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Yeah. So, so this is a term no less than usually 30 years, but you want to make sure you know what that timeline is. Amortized over X number of years. So, funny, I have not worked with Missouri, so okay, good to know, just in case. So this next section here, so we're in section 9, line 54. And this is the dollar amount that your buyer is asking your seller to pay in closing costs. So again, no assumptions ever. So talk to your lender, find out what their closing costs are. I was shocked one time when I had a lender that was like, oh, our closing costs are only $1,500. But these are closing costs, prepaid expenses, origination fees, discount points. So it may not be just their closing costs. You want to make sure you talk to your lender. What would we like to see our buyer get the seller to pay for them? I don't know about Missouri, but my parents just sold a house in Minnesota, and their closing costs were $6,000 that the seller paid. I've never asked that for a client before. So I don't know what Missouri looks like if any of you are doing Missouri, but I know in Illinois, traditionally, I would say the majority of my contracts are $2,500 to $3,000.
Well, bear in mind that,
What's up, Pam?
there's a cap on certain products too.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You definitely want to talk to if you're writing an FHA conventional or VA. There's
Right,
a cap.
because they cap at
Right.
6%.
Mhm.
Yep. So, which will also be important to know before you do inspections, because if this number right here is already at or near the cap, but then you're wanting to ask for a dollar amount in lieu of repairs, you may not even be able to do that. So you need to know this from your lender in advance, because otherwise you're going to bump into that when you get to inspections. So why would you not already know that number? The pre-approval letter attached or shall be submitted. Attached is extraordinarily important, especially today in this strong seller's market. They want to see that your buyer has already done their due diligence and that you have done a good job as their agent by having them have that already in hand. If you do still have to get it, maybe you have a brand new buyer and they just saw a house and they didn't know, they had never talked to anyone and they didn't know they had to be prepared, but this is for sure going to be a multiple offer situation, and you have to get them the pre-approval. You need to fill in the date that you're promising to have it to them by. If the rest of this verbiage, if they don't have it to the seller, the seller has the right to send you a termination notice if they had a backup offer that was ready to go. So you need to make sure that not only your buyer is on top of that, but you're also always on top of your dates. Okay, so next lines, 61 through 63, talk about the date that the financial contingencies have to be met. No matter what date you put in here, the deferred date is always going to be 10 days prior to closing. You can put in whatever date of days after the effective date. So after, remember, effective date is the date that every party has signed this offer, making it a contract. So, I mean, if for simplicity's sake, if you want to put the date in here as the closing date, so you can say 60 days if that's when you're closing, it's still, no matter what, going to be 10 days prior to closing because it's going to be whichever date is earlier. Make sense? Okay. So again, this is all your financing. These little boxes right here are the type of loan that your buyer is getting. Some of your pre-approvals, again, a reason you need to make sure that you are communicating with the lender. Some pre-approvals don't actually say what kind of loan they're getting. So you need to know, a bird just flew into my window. Holy cow. So you need to know what kind of loan your client is getting. Remember, I just talked about the client who changed lenders. So with her first lender, we had a different amount that she was putting down, which would have changed these first lines here. So what percentage she was putting down, and it was a different loan program. So when she said, while we're filling this out, she's like, oh, I didn't tell you, I decided to go with a different lender. So when I get that pre-approval, you know, I'll let you know. And I said, okay, well, I need that lender's phone number. We need to talk about this right now. And when I called that lender, she even changed what her loan program was. So, and if that happens after the fact, you can do an amendment. Say they thought they were getting a VA loan, but now we're changing it to FHA. You can write an amendment for that if they change programs after the fact, because this is part of your contract. So again, this is going to go through those different loan programs and spell them out and give you the definition of those. Bottom of the page, so you're getting your buyer's initials. Top of the page, address and date. And again, just those different loan programs, that's what all of this is. If there's a mortgage assumption, so your buyer is taking over the mortgage from the seller. Personally, I've never done one. So I don't know if they come up very often. Have you guys, Pam, maybe you can chime in on, you know, on mortgage assumptions. Barry, have you done one?
I did one.
You did?
Yeah, they're very rare.
Yeah. I mean, I've never even had anybody ever bring it up, much less do one.
It's a thing that was done back in the 80s and early 90s.
Mhm.
Not something that's done now.
Yeah, I've not seen one. So, but it's all in here. Everything's covered just in case.
Mortgages have a clause in there that doesn't allow for that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so we should update contracts. So again, other programs that are or were out there. So purchase money mortgage, secondary mortgage loan. I've also not done one of those. Anybody, I mean, any info? The blanks are going to fill out if you do one.
What did you say?
Nope.
I missed your question, Sheila. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
secondary mortgage loans?
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
It's actually, well, it's actually, they're done because it says or bridge loan.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I've done a bridge loan.
I have not, is that crazy? I've not ever done one. So, contract for deed, cash transaction. So if you're doing cash, I have done those on land purchases. I haven't done one on a house yet. But cash purchases, so that would be the box you check if that were the case. Again, bottom of the page. So they're going to initial, top of the page, address, date. Appraisal. So this is spelling out the appraisal. And again, making sure you're reading this in its entirety because the appraisal dates are important. I have had 2 recent deals be postponed because of appraisers not getting them done in a timely manner. Sadly, we don't get to choose our appraisers. We don't get to fire the appraiser. appraiser, that goes through your buyer's lender. And so it is on your lender to make sure that they are staying on top of that. It must be obtained no later than the financing contingency date. So remember, we talked about that, and that has to be at least by 10 days before closing. So when you have an appraiser that doesn't do that, it's going to push your closing back. So you're already going to know a minimum of 10 days before closing if you're not going to be able to close on time because of the appraisal. If it is a VA loan, that appraisal needs to happen well in advance, because a VA might have predications, so things that are non-negotiables, that this loan is not going to happen for your buyer unless those things are fixed on the house by the seller. If it is an FHA, there could be something that they require to be done before closing can happen. So again, the lender is sending out for the appraisal to happen. They put that out. They get the appraiser. You're not going to know who the appraiser is most of the time. Occasionally you find out, but it's not something that's generally communicated from the lender to you, unless you run into a problem and need to make a call. You don't generally talk to the appraiser. Maybe they contact you because lately I had one call to ask what comps I knew of. I also had the buyer recently where the appraiser called the listing agent for comps, and she gave him higher comps to make sure that it definitely appraised for more, because the seller's agent wanted it to be higher, and we knew, my buyer and I knew, that it probably wasn't that high. And we were right. So my buyer wound up getting the condo for less than we had negotiated for. We initially made a lower offer. The seller was determined to sell it higher. We said we're not buying it that high, and it had been on the market a long time. So inevitably negotiating, we came to a higher amount than I thought my buyer should be paying for it, but she still really wanted the property. And so we, like I said, we negotiated at a price. And I said, well, I still don't think it's going to appraise for that no matter what. And the listing agent said, of course it will. And like I said, the listing agent spoke with the appraiser and gave him some numbers that were, I think, made up, because she said that there were sales she knew of that weren't on the MLS. The appraiser and I couldn't find anything anywhere. And when the appraisal came in, it was right at the amount that we had initially offered. And so the sellers came down to that, and we got it for our initial offer after lots of negotiation and a little bit of stress, and then wound up getting it for that anyway. So fun example. So in section 11, property inspections and contingencies. So this is going to spell out for you due diligence on getting your inspections done. Just know that this number is set in stone. 20 days after your effective date is when your inspection responses are due, signed, filled out by you, signed by your buyer to the listing agent, 20 days after the effective date. Please don't get them to them on the 20th day. They have 10 days to respond after that. However, know that if you do stress to your buyer, calling and getting those inspections set up as soon as possible from the date you're writing that offer. Like, no, these are the inspectors you're calling. This is my list of recommendations, or maybe they know someone. Call, get that set up. Don't wait. You'll have a buyer that's like, well, I don't get paid for 2 weeks to be able to get those inspections done. That you should have already talked about that in your buyer's consultation. Those fees That was one of those sections we talked about. You want to make sure you're talking about those fees so that she's prepared and you don't get to this point and now she can't pay to get inspections done. So getting those inspections done immediately, but know that in these 20 days with the wood destroying insects inspection response, that actually has to be turned in immediately. You have to get that to the seller right away. So you can't wait. Maybe your buyer is like, oh, I don't have time to chat about the inspections with you until Thursday. And you're like, okay, we'll talk Thursday. And now, you know, Thursdays, or, you know, if today's Monday, sorry, I guess it's, so today's Monday, she can't talk till Thursday. And you talk about all of your inspection responses and it has termite damage or it has carpenter bees. And now she's like, well, I want to ask them to treat for those. You've already missed your deadline on the wood destroying insect report. So know that you don't have that same timeline on that particular report. If she can't talk about the rest until then, that's fine, but you need to get that one in immediately. So again, these are your time frames. Make sure you're reading all of this and know everything. Environmental defects. So if your radon report, structural defects, again, we're going to skim over this. These are all things you want to make sure that you're talking to your client about your inspections and your inspection remedies. So you will have an inspection response where you can make a request to have the seller take care of those items on your inspections. We have a whole separate class for inspections. So, so talking about what those items may be and what those remedies might be. So address and date, of course, because it's the top of a page. So again here, wood infestation, everybody always just says termite. There's lots of other things that can damage a house. So carpenter bees are something I've run into a couple of times lately. Inspectors you can get a deck inspection separate for that if you need to see how torn up it might be, because your bug guy might tell you it has that, but you don't know what damage is in there. So you can get those kind of inspections. Governmental inspections and occupancy permits, make sure that you know the town that you're in or the municipality, what kind of inspections they require. This is more and more a big deal all the time because there's more adding. Some towns don't require them at all of any kind. Some require them only on rental properties. Highland is one of those towns, it's just on rentals. And some are purchases. So you need to know if that is required to do before you close. I believe in all municipalities, the seller is responsible for those. I haven't run into one yet that the seller isn't, but I don't work in every town in the area, so there may be. But the seller is responsible for those in advance, and the listing agent should have already taken care of that on that side. So again, initials by your buyer, address, and date. So this is continuing with the occupancy inspections, should they need to be done, and your dates. Know your dates. Make sure you're putting it in a tracker. Make sure you're putting it in your opportunities. Alicia and I actually sat down and went through mine and made sure that everything is in there that is pertinent. Access to the property. This is that the seller is agreeing to permit access for everything that needs to happen. So the seller is going to sign off on this, that they are going to make sure that the property is available for inspections, any contractor that might need to come in to do any repairs you've agreed to. It says pest inspections separately than government inspectors, property inspectors, the appraiser, for you to be able to get in for your final walkthrough. All of those things that have to happen to make this deal close. So next, section 15 is adjustments and closing costs. So these are all the things in the first section that the buyer is going to pay for, all the things that the seller is going to pay for, and that prorations between the buyer and seller as they've agreed to. So if the seller is going to take care of something or the buyer, every now and then, I've had a couple of times where a buyer has said, the seller is not going to pay for this, but I need something to happen to be able to meet the predications for my loan, but the seller isn't going to, and we've agreed that I can come in and do those. So this covers all those bases. So make sure you spell all that out to your buyer. Taxes and assessments. That your buyer knows. If they've never owned a home before, they might not know that taxes in the state of Illinois are in arrears, so they're paid from the prior year. So make sure that they understand how the real estate tax bills are on the property and that they know what their obligation is to that. So again, bottom of page 6, so initials, address and date, because you are going to have to put the date in manually. So just remember not to forget to do that. Next section is about the deed. So that will again happen at closing. Your title company is going to do all the title work. So they're working hand in hand. At the same time, you're taking care of all the things you need to for your buyer to make the purchase happen and doing your inspections. The lender is making sure that the financials are being taken care of with the buyer, and the title company at the same time is making sure that the title is free and clear. So all of these things are happening at the same time so that everybody can meet our deadlines. And so again, know your deadlines always. Surveys, if a survey has to happen on the property, maybe there's a lot line dispute. Maybe nobody was sure what the lot lines are. That sometimes happens in our rural communities when land has been split among a family and now nobody knows anymore. So make sure that the survey happens should it need to. And that you know your dates on those, because this is all spelled out for you. So buyer's initials, address and date. Homeowner's insurance, one of those things you need to talk to. It's one of those fees at the beginning when you're meeting with your clients that they are going to, if they've never owned a property before, and maybe they were a renter, but they never had renter's insurance, so that they know that they have to have homeowner's insurance, and they're free to call whoever they want. But if they like whoever has their car insurance, they can tie it together and maybe save some money. So they have to have their homeowner's insurance figured out within 20 days, same as inspection. So they have homework right away that they have to get that lined up because their lender is going to ask them for that information within 20 days after the effective date. Flood insurance, should they need to have flood insurance. Any notices? So if I've not run into any notices I've ever had to worry about. Is there anything, any good examples anybody else has that you've run into, notices that maybe have to be dealt with? Nothing? Okay. So your next things, holy cow, guys, I just looked at the clock. So your next sections are the risk of loss. So again, if something happens that may be, let's see.
Hail damage.
I'm sorry?
Hail damage.
Yes. Yes. Good example. So the roof maybe is a total loss, and something has to be, that it's going to need a new roof. Siding, that would be another thing. Within 10 days, so dates, always know these dates. In your contract, these dates are always in bold numbers because no one wants you to miss these. But if you don't read it over and you don't know what those are, and sometimes if your life gets crazy and you don't set reminders, you can miss them. So make sure that you're not missing that within 10 days after the buyer has received notice of that damage, that is sent to the insurance agency, that things are taken care of. If those things are not, your buyer can terminate. Remedies, it's going to go over those remedies. Earnest money, this spells it out for them should you already have not talked to them about it in the beginning, which you should, but here's your definition about earnest money. Again, initials, address, date. This goes into mediation, arbitration, litigation in paragraph 26. So I have not ever had to deal with anything major for, this spells it out for you, all disputes or claims for $5,000 or more, for over $5,000. I've thankfully not had any issues that could not be taken care of. Less than, you know, if you have something that the seller, like there was a brand new water heater in the house and the seller switched it out for an old one because the house that they were buying needed a new one. So they took theirs and they put in an older one. And your buyers go, you know, hey, what happened here? That would fall under the $5,000 range. Pam, I see you on camera now, so I always wonder if you have something to say now.
Finally got it handled and makeup on, so I didn't scare the daylights out of all y'all.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I just thought maybe you were hopping in. So any of those things that that might just need to be handled, this is where everybody is agreeing that that they aren't necessarily going to jump the gun and call a lawyer and start some big issue over something that that can be taken care of prior. Have you guys run into anything, any examples that are better? I don't have good examples for something that happened beyond this.
It could be something like, if you, can you hear me really good now, Sheila?
It's a little bit quiet.
I don't know what there is with my mic on this, so I apologize. It could be something like, say you went to a home inspection and something happened, they had it fixed and went through the final walkthrough, everything looked good, and after the people moved in, say it was discovered that it actually wasn't fixed, okay? So you could then take that to arbitration. Like, and when people do that, typically they take us all, so just so you know, not just gonna take the seller, they're gonna take us all. And so you would then bring that to arbitration. The idea being that the seller didn't disclose or didn't fix the issue properly.
Right, but all things under 5,000. I've never had anything go beyond that. But this is so that your buyers and sellers know that we can work. Oh, I see your lips moving, Pam, but I can't hear you. But these are things that we're telling them. If it is under $5,000, don't call a lawyer. This is designed to make sure we can take care of that. Don't jump the gun. We have there's a plan just in case. The last thing you want is your buyer paying a lawyer for something that they didn't need to. So that's what this is a fail-safe for, that little net. These are just definitions. So again, if you did not know what the definition of effective date, timing, acknowledgements, these are your definitions for those words that are used throughout the agreement. So again, bottom of the page, initials, address, date. Again, some more definitions of governing law, construction, faxes. I don't know anybody that uses faxes anymore, but emails. So this covers what electronic copies of things. Do you know anybody who uses? Pam, you're laughing. Fax, you use fax. So any electronic documents, like we were saying earlier, any information, you know, when they sign, sorry, that representation, that bottom section on that last page, on the third page, is that all those electronic documents, texts, emails, those are true and actual documents. So I think everybody treats them like that now. Maybe in the early days of email, they didn't and had to spell it out. Again, non-discrimination in bold, because this, and I know in your class you guys went over this over and over, because we always do, to make sure that you are not discriminating against anybody in any way. Termination procedures, this is going to cover all of those, and your dates about termination. So that date that you want to know, that when a termination notice is given, hopefully you never have to deal with one. I've had only a couple. It has to be returned within 5 days, or there is a paragraph that actually is a fail-safe for it not being signed off on. Sometimes people get mad at other people and they just refuse to sign completed documents when something falls apart. So there is a contingency for that that's on the termination notice. Addendas. So these are all the things that you are attaching to this contract. So we're going to go over some of those. I'll just kind of go through my file and show you. These are contingencies. If your buyer has a property that they have to sell, you want to make sure that you are doing addendum A and not leaving your buyer hanging. Potentially the sale of their home, the deal goes south and falls apart, and now they still have a home. But if you do not fill out this contingency, they are still obligated to buy this property. So make sure that you do your due diligence and have that contingency filled out. Possession by the seller after closing, if for whatever reason the seller is staying in the house longer. I have had one of these. It was an older lady, couldn't get into the nursing home until after the date. Her family just assumed that she could get in. They, I guess, didn't check to see how full it was and that there wasn't a room for her. And so we had a closing date planned, and it didn't happen. So we had to do an amendment for that. But if you already know in advance, maybe the family would have been proactive and knew that she couldn't get in, but they wanted to make sure this happened because the buyer wanted the property by a certain date, then they might have already had something in their disclosures on the MLS, saying that she was going to need to stay longer. That would have solved that problem. New construction addendum, repairs addendums, personal property addendum. This is something you're going to fill out saying the refrigerator, the stove, the microwave, the garbage disposal, if one exists. So you're going to fill that out. That's going to be a separate form. The limited purpose entry by the buyer prior to closing. I have done this twice now for VA loans that had predications and the seller wasn't going to fix anything, but the buyer still wanted the property. And so we already knew, we knew that in advance. The listing agent and I had talked. She said they're not fixing anything. We knew it was a VA loan. We knew that there was going to have to be a railing put on. And so they gave us permission for my buyer to put the railing on. So, yeah.
I beg your pardon. I was just going to throw a helping hand in there. So these, in paragraph 38, all of these documents, okay, they're not checked, and you write an addendum, but they're not checked. They are not part of this contract, period. And just a word of caution, there are 2 on here. All of these are 1-page documents because, sometimes we're hurrying and we forget to look. So, I do it myself. So there's only 2 on here that are more than 1 page, and that's the addendum C and the residential real property disclosure. So anytime you're looking at these 1-pagers, those 2, new construction and the residential real property disclosure, are more than 1 page. So just bear that in mind.
Yep, good point.
you.
No, that's okay. Contract for deed, should you be doing one? Short sale contingency, if you have one of those. Secondary contracts, again, all things you'll attach. Residential real property disclosure, like Pam said, this is a 4-page document. So this should be on the MLS in the disclosures. So should lead, if it's a home that's potentially has lead, if it's built before 78, and radon. Those should all be disclosures that you'll find in the MLS. Another reason why it's good to have your MLS open and already printing everything that's available before you show the home to your buyer, because you want to have those disclosures signed by them when they're looking at the house, or if you can send them to them before, if you have an advance date set to go see it and you're not going to look at it the spur of the moment, send it to them so that they can look over those disclosures and they can get those signed so that they know in advance before they even go look at a property. So terrible when you have a client. I just sold a home that had a bunch of issues. We had disclosures. It was all out there on the MLS. Of course, I had attached it like you should. And the buyer's agent didn't even look at them herself before she showed the property. So then she says, we're writing an offer, and I just looked at these disclosures. Why? Don't be that agent. Be the agent that has already, when your client says, I want to see XYZ property, you are going on the MLS and you are doing all that research, and then say, hey, I know those pictures look really pretty. However, I just want you to know that the roof has a leak. The basement has foundational issues. Do you still want to go see it? Be that agent. Be proactive. So that is these disclosures. Please, please, please do not be getting these signed when you're attaching them. But yes, like Pam said, you have to check these, make sure you're attaching them. If you have additional addendums, if you have any special agreements, a special agreement, this is one thing that's come up a lot lately, is the escalation clause. There is no form for an escalation clause. If your buyer has said, we're offering $260 on this property, however, to you, they've said, we would really be willing to offer $285 if we get into negotiations. Right now, an excellent property, priced well, gorgeous pictures on the MLS is going to get a ton of showings. It might have multiple offers. You can write in special agreements that you are attaching this escalation clause. Attaching is the wrong word because there's not a form. That you are, what's the word I'm looking for? I just used it. I'm sorry?
Adding.
You're authorized. First of all, you're authorized to do it. The buyer's instructed you to do it. That's one thing.
Correct. But there's a word I used when I just did one, and now I can't remember what word it was. Darn it. Anyway, that you are putting into effect the escalation clause authorized by the buyer to increase the offer price by $500 up to X dollar amount, $285, in $500 increments. Do you guys I put proof to be provided that it was necessary. I want to see that it was necessary to come to, so I say proof to be provided should contract become effective.
And I also put the rejected offer must be an arm's length transaction and not contingent offer with similar terms.
Good verbiage. You need to type that out for me.
Well, now, Sheila, that's for my clients. I'm just saying, you know.
That's your secret. Pam's magic sauce. So yes, make sure, so there is no form for an escalation clause. It would just make life easier if there was, but there is not. So that's a special agreement. Any other special agreements somebody's used recently that would be a good example? I always feel like those things come up as on an as needed basis that you didn't think about in advance.
One of the things that we got to keep in mind is we're not allowed to cross out or anything on that contract. So anything
Yes.
put in special agreements is really a carte blanche, you know. I think recently one of our agents had put in there, you know, a buyer didn't want to do inspections until after an appraisal.
Oh, yeah, you can't change that.
Yeah.
That's not a special agreement.
Well, it was because we had to change, but we weren't allowed to take out that appraisal, right?
Yes.
So if we agreed to it, it is in terms of a special agreement because it's negotiated. That's what that is, that special agreement section is to say, we're changing something in the contract or we're adding something to it that is not pre-printed. And we can't, since we can't change it, not acting as attorneys, then we have to then add it to this section.
To write it in. Yes, not just crossing it out.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep. So this is your opportunity to write that in 3 lines. This is another thing that I think that people don't always understand well is agent interest. So agent interest, I think a lot of people just assume means if you're selling your own house. But agent interest is also if you have direct interest in making, of course, we always want all of our buyers to get the very best deal ever. Yes, I have a vested interest in doing the best job for my clients. Agent interest in this case is that I'm buying a house for my mom, like I'm helping her, then yes, this should be filled in because I definitely have a heart interest in this property. So just know that's not always only you. So again, initials, address, date. This page 11 is the most frustrating page ever, Pam, because so many agents do not fill in the blanks. Do not be that agent. It is so easy to fill it out entirely. Yes, you don't always know. Maybe you are putting in an offer for a house that is vacant, but the tax records, again, why we pull up the tax records out of the MLS, the tax records give you the name or names of the sellers and their address. That is what you know. You know that that is their address. Even though there's not a single can of soup left in the pantry, nobody lives there for sure. But if the tax records say that that is their address, you put that address in there. You do not say, well, I don't know, they moved and I don't have their address. This is their address to your knowledge. So you fill in their information. You fill in, obviously, all of our selling brokerage and you as the designated agent. You are going to fill this out in its entirety. And you're going to fill that out for the listing broker and the designated agent because all of that information is easily accessible. So you don't ever leave those things blank. The only thing I'm going to give you permission to leave blank is if you only have one buyer or one seller and there's not a second buyer or seller. You can leave those blank. And if there's no facts, you can leave those blank. Those are the only ones I'm telling you you can leave blank. Everything else must be filled out completely because you can, and why would you not? So next section, line 601, is the contract to be accepted by the seller by whatever time and whatever date that you and your buyer have agreed to. Make sure that, again, there are agents who arbitrarily will fill in 24 or 48 hours. And that's what they do on every contract. And that's the time. And then clients are going, when are we going to find out? When are we going to find out? When are we going to find out? They need to know what this date and time is. They have to be part of this process. So you are definitely going to work with them filling this out. They are going to sign here. This is where when the earnest money is received, that's when that gets filled out. this is where the listing agency fills out when they've received the offer from you. That's easily done in Loop and DocuSign. You can put their signature in there. They're blank for them to sign it, so you know automatically when the listing agent has received it. And then 606 is where they are going to fill out when they have either accepted, rejected, or made a counter offer. And the seller is going to sign here. Here's another non-negotiable in my eyes: title company information. The answer is not to be determined. The answer is you contacting the listing agent and finding out what that is. That is a good point. Thank you for pointing that out. That it must be less than 24 hours for the, oh, you're talking.
Sorry, I missed it must not be less than 24 hours unless circumstances.
Right. If there's like the multiple offer situation I just had last weekend, the listing agent contacted me before our showing even happened. The house went live at 9 a.m. and it was coming soon. And at 9 a.m., it still was not available to set up an appointment. So I called the listing agent and I said, hey, you know, MLS, you put in, you know, notes that it was going to be live at 9 a.m. And I said, I still can't make an appointment. I want to make sure my client gets in. And she said, oh yeah, I still haven't done it yet. I'll text you as soon as I get it set up. And so she sent me a text, and so we got it set up. We got an appointment. However, even at that time when she texted me to say that it was live, there were already appointments in there. I know, it was crazy. And so our appointment was at 6. She called me sent me a text at 4 and said, we already have multiple offers on the table, and there are 2 showings still after you, and all offers must be submitted by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we're deciding at 10. We'll notify everybody. So in that circumstance, we had a deadline of, we put noon, just in case, like, who knows? She said they're going to decide by 10, but maybe not. So we just put the deadline in at noon because we knew they were going to have the answer. They were planning on having the answer to everybody because all the offers had to be in by 9 a.m. and we were looking at it at 6 p.m. the night before. So, yep. So that is a good point. So a title company, fill this out completely. There's no reason not to. And again, initials. Questions? It's a lot of information.
Just so you know, Anita considers page 11 is the biggest fight I have with every agent ever. And it's always. And there's a specific company out there with a big slash in it that they don't fill out page 11 at all. Yeah. And Anita will not accept contracts if they're not completed. And just remember, you're not the one who's accepting it. It's Anita. So.
Yep.
Alicia, that the lenders are going to ask for it back.
Right.
They're going to always. You might as well just, that's that proactive again.
Yep.
Absolutely.
It's always a fight, and it always makes for a sticky. And just so you guys know, you're new kiddos to the playing field. You're the new kids on the slide, right? And all of these agents out here who are lazy and have these big fluffed up egos are going to look at you and say, who the hell are you telling me what to do and how to do my job, right? And you're just going to sit there and say, well, I work for KW and I do stuff the right way. So if you want your offer submitted, I recommend you have it completed. So.
Wow, I don't say the right way. I just say I do it the way that I'm told to do. You know, I'm right.
I'm
you're wrong.
in my mind going, do it the right way. So that's why it comes out.
Right? Nanny, nanny, boo boo.
So having worked for that slash company for 25 years. Yeah.
It's not just them. I mean, I know lots of agents. Honestly, most of the agents that I see do it, I would say they're older agents, but there are plenty of just lazy agents. They're just lazy. And there's just lots of agents that are like, somebody else will fill it in. You can't. Once it is signed, you cannot, and I've seen it happen, where an agent will get what, right? I know you're like freaking out. because, and it happens all the time, we've all seen it, where an agent will just go, well, my client hasn't signed yet. They've signed it, and Dotloop has downloaded it to me, preserving the signatures. And so if I download it and preserve the signatures, I'll just fill in all the other stuff and then send it to my client to sign. You can't do that.
So I'll tell you guys, I know we're way over, but I'll share this with you. The contract was sent to me. I sent it back for improvement on page 11. She downloaded it because the buyer had already signed it, and then added in all these fields. And then I said, well, that's contract fraud. I'm going to need you to go back and redo that and have it resubmitted. She was like, well, do you just want this contract or do you not? And I'm like, I'm protecting both you, me, and both parties involved. Do you want to participate in that protection or not? So then it became a conversation with Anita, and this is why I love Anita, because she was like, well, maybe you're managing broker and I should sit down and talk about brokerage law because what you just did is illegal. I was like, oh my God, I love you, Anita, so much. So it was a whole thing. It was really intense. I was like, you can't do that.
Oh, yeah.
Caution to the new folks too. The lenders will tell you, oh, just print it and fill it in. No. By the way, heck no.
They don't care. They're not going to pay your fine or pay your bills when you lose your license. So they don't care.
No. The worst case scenario, especially if you're dealing with electronics, just if you want to flat load it and fill it in, then you have to put it back and ask everybody to sign it again. That's all you have to do.
Yep.
And
I hate to be the party pooper, but are we done?
Hey, we're learning stuff.
I know we are. One thing I want to say, I won't open it, but I'm just going to point these out. Make sure these are available to you. The Radon Trifold and the lead-based paint manual. Make sure you are emailing those to your clients so they have time to read those if they need to know those things. Make sure our square footage disclosure, if the listing agent does not have one in the system, we have a Keller Williams one that makes sure that Kate or somebody sends to you. If maybe it's in our PC program packet, I'm not sure. But make sure you have the square footage measurement. So I just have it saved in my documents. And make sure that on the residential real property disclosure report, it's the 4-page one that you attach to an offer. The 4th page, the seller should have signed, but the date is blank because the date is the date you gave it to your client. A lot of listing agents have their sellers date it, and that's not what that's for. It is for you to date it the day you give to your buyer. The buyer doesn't sign the 4th page. It's just a date that you have to enter. So make sure you don't forget that. Okay, done. Thanks, guys.
All right, welcome back, everybody. And now it's Pam's turn to go over the contract to close.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Pam. I am going to walk you through the contract to close. Let me get my screen up here as soon as I figure it out. And that's it. This is my first time, guys, so bear with me. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Pam, can you go ahead and make it a presentation for us? Yeah. Yeah.
Dang it. Is it full screen for y'all?
No.
No.
Well, then let's make that happen. I don't know how to make that. Oh, yeah, I do. I always say that I'm
There you go.
Yeah, I always say that I'm a tech nerd, but in this case, I'm like, wait, what? So contract to close. So once you get a contract in, I mean, Sheila's gone through all this with you guys. You've all been here through the class. I don't know that we need to continue to go through it unless you want to. So we got the pre-approval process. Sheila went through that with you. Pre-approval, talking to your lender, and doing that buyer consultation. I can't even say how much that is so important. It speaks to building rapport with your client. It speaks to getting to know what their needs and wants are. It talks, it encompasses everything you need to know before you set out and running around and, showing houses and what have you. So once you do that, you're going to have them find their dream home. We've gone through the contract. And now that we've got this offer accepted, we're going to set our sights on inspections. Okay. I don't know how you want me to explain it, Barry, or how in detail, but basically what you're going to end up doing is, as Sheila mentioned, you have a certain amount of time to get your inspections done. Those are 20 days. Unless you negotiate something different, people have done that, but the standard on the contract is 20 days from the effective date. Does everybody know what the effective date is? Show of hands, anybody? Okay, we all know what effective date is. Okay, I know you do, Miss Sheila. Um, so once you get that settled, you're going to take your buyer through that process. I don't often do that in the buyer consultation. I start it at that time. And I'll tell them, okay, well, we got to do teacher inspections. You're going to offer them inspectors unless they already have someone, but it has to be a state licensed inspector. If it is not, the seller's not obligated to do any of the repairs. Excuse me. So the buyer will set up the inspections. They'll have the inspections. The report comes back to you. You read the report thoroughly. And then you'll go and talk with your buyer about what items that are, what's the word I'm looking for? Defective. Okay, so in the contract, we're talking about structural, safety, and latent defects. Does everybody know what latent defects is? Anybody know what that is? What does latent mean?
Obvious ones.
Sorry?
Like obvious defects, cracks in walls, I mean, things of that nature.
It means the unobvious ones. So anything that is not shown at when, like to the, I'm going to say, I hope, I'm not getting in trouble, but naked eye. The naked eye, when you're looking at the property, if you might not see that crack in the wall, Blake. So you actually, you're almost there, but if you didn't see a finished basement, that it had a crack in the wall behind that paneling, right? And the inspector came and pulled the paneling off to look at the wall, that would be a latent defect. So those are types of things we're looking for. As far as anything cosmetic, we want to make sure that we're counseling the buyer on, being careful as to what they're asking for in adherence to the contract. Okay. You will negotiate those. You will write a response. I do want to show you a buyer's response because I know recently I've had where we didn't have one of the agents wasn't familiar with the responses. They're all the same, okay? And it's just one page and every bit. I think, were you talking, Sheila, about the different, through the contract, you were talking about the different items of inspection, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So all the responses are the same. It's a checkbox. Has anyone seen any of those other than obviously the, already agents that have been doing it? You guys been looking at that stuff?
And then a separate one, I didn't say it when we were talking about it, just because I didn't really go over inspections, but a separate response has to be done for every inspection. I've actually had agents submit to me, like they did all the inspections and they were all fine. So they just checked all the boxes and said that the buyer was good. You can't do that.
You can't do that. Okay. I actually have seen that done in the past and I didn't really be mad about it. So I figured it was a shortcut, but I didn't think anything of it. I mean, I've seen it come across my desk. I haven't personally done it, but so I'm trying to find it. Of course I can't because I'm looking for it, right? So yeah. Anyways, on inspections, again, you want to just basically, look through it and see what those defects are. Has anybody done an inspection? Had a problem with an inspection? Had any experiences with inspections that you might want to share with, anybody else? I think this is an important point. This is a pivotal moment in the transaction. If you don't get past the inspections or you can't get this negotiated.
Look, the inspector is a detective working for the buyer. That's really what it is. They are a detective and they are looking for safety and security of the home. You've heard these horror stories of inspectors calling out a hole in the screen being too big and it'll let bugs in and they want $500 for it. Or a drippy faucet, they want $500 for it, or you to install a new faucet. Really, the purpose of an inspector is to make sure that that house is safe. And we're talking, and that's why inspectors typically do red, yellow, and green items, or whatever color. But they talk about those safety issues that need to be fixed. They talk about those. You probably want to get this looked at, and then they talk about homeowner care items. I will tell you, as a new agent, go to the inspection the first couple anyway. Amazing the things you will learn standing there with an inspector. And inspectors don't mind it, right? If nothing else, be there for the out brief, because they're going to tell you, an inspector is going to tell you information that's not going to be in the report. They're going to give you information. Hey, we found this, not a big deal, but we have to write it up because it's just the way it is. We have to write it up. And you're going to be ready. So back to you, Pam.
Oh, thanks, Barry. Thanks for that, because I totally forgot about that. So can you guys see the inspection response? All good? Everybody can see that? I'm going to put a cough drop in my mouth. Sorry, I'm about to cough every minute. So you can see here, contract dated, that's your effective date, your property address, buy in between seller and buyer. And as Sheila said, you want to take one for every, every inspection. So if you're doing the whole house, check mark. If you're doing the environmental, check mark, and so on. And if you look at the very first one, it says if there's nothing that they want, that contingency is now waived. And that, I think, Sheila, speaks to why it is that, they're separate. That's what I think. But anyway, then the next one down is the buyer request satisfaction of. So if we check mark that, we're going to take, and I would advise you guys always to take exactly what the buyer says. In other words, don't take it by phone. Don't take it by your notes. Make sure that they're sending it to you in an email or a fax for us old folks. Make sure that they're putting it in writing for you. It can look like they're circling it on the report and sending it to you. They can send it in an email, a fax, anything that's solid that you can have a record of. The name of the game in real estate is CYA. We all know that. So that said, you can then cut and paste or copy and paste into here. Another option is you can put C attached and put it in a letter form. I've seen that as well. Your choice. So, okay. No, we don't change that. Anyway, so now we've got the inspections all negotiated. We may come to a point in the inspections, as Sheila mentioned too, that maybe the seller doesn't want to do those repairs, right? They might say, well, I'll give you $500 or whatever. And instead of that, so there's a box on there. I probably should have shown it to you, but there's a box on there. It says seller has 3 choices. He's going to go ahead and do all of those. He's going to do some and give you money. He's not going to do them at all. Or I'm going to give you, this is what I say I'm going to do. So there's a couple of different ways that the seller would respond to that. When they do, obviously you're going to present it to your buyer. And again, check with your lender if they're offering a credit to make sure you're not capped in your closing cost credits. This is very intricate, but good news is you got a great team around here. We'll all walk you through it any given time. So don't fret when you're looking at that. It's a lot of information. And I agree with Barry. Go to first couple inspections. The inspectors are great. They're particularly, they use the same type of forms, all of them. There's only like 2 or 3 programs. So you get familiar with everybody's reports. There are not very many variations. Okay, next thing. We're gonna go to appraisal, title, and survey. And appraiser comes out, gives their opinion of the home. That is, ordered by the lender. Just a note really quickly, there are some lenders, particularly Missouri lenders, and I don't know why, but it seems they do this. They will tell the client, or on occasion I've had the client say, I do not want to do my appraisal until after my inspections are settled. That is not what the contract says. And anytime you have a lender who's saying, yeah, we're going to order the appraisal after the inspections are done, you need to either have a conversation with the lender or a conversation with the buyer, because the due diligence and the timeframes in your contract does not allow for that. Particularly because we're going to end up at the end of our contract, like Sheila was saying, we only have this, this is our timeline. So if we were waiting, let's say you took those full 20 days, let's say you went into the 30 days, let's say you have an agent who waited to the 20th day. Now you have another 10 days for the seller to negotiate. You don't get it all squared away. Now you're 30 days into the contract and your appraisal hasn't even been ordered. So an appraisal can take 2 and 3 and 4 weeks, depending on the product someone's in. So please know that when you're dealing with appraisers or any kind of lender, they need to know we have to have the appraisal ordered ASAP, like immediately, because that's what the contract says, that the buyer agrees to apply for their loan immediately. So just a word of caution there, because that can really mess up your deal. So appraiser does his thing, comes back into bank, mortgage company, and meanwhile, we're ordering title work. So they're doing it. I don't know, does anyone know what title work is? Everybody kind of familiar with title work? Or do you guys know what it entails? No? Yes?
They have their title. The title class will be Friday.
Ooh, sorry. Okay. So basically the title is just looking at the property and the parties to make sure that everybody's no liens, nothing on the property is clear. And also it looks at the buyers and sellers to make sure that they also have no liens from the IRS or state of Illinois type things. One of my favorite ones, give a really good example. Had a gal buying a property, no big deal, got her all approved, and here comes the title work. And she owes, I think it was $42,000 in back child support. So she wasn't buying anything that day. So that the title work can be your friend. Okay, so then survey, you guys don't do surveys in Illinois, do you?
On land.
On land you do? Okay. Yeah, I haven't even done a survey in probably 10 years, 10 or 15 years. You can order them on.
Now, if you're having to do a survey, if it's a piece of property or even if it's like a farm, one of the things you got to keep in mind is that survey has to be done by a licensed surveyor. His word is basically a law. He has to create the legal description. The title company nor you can write a legal description for a property. It has to be done by an attorney, or actually written by a surveyor and approved by an attorney. And it has to be accepted and approved by the county. So there's 2 or 3 sets of eyes that go on it. So if you're looking to get a survey done right before closing, you're going to need 3 or 4 days to get a survey cleared.
At least. I think it would, don't you think, Barry, it would depend on the county too? Like how long does the county take to?
Yeah, Madison County takes like 2 days. St. Clair takes just a couple of days. If just because they've got automated systems and they're pretty good about it. But if you get down in some of those southern Illinois counties where they don't have a GIS set up, it can take weeks because they have to manually look at them.
Oh, got it. Okay. So am I going too fast? Anybody got any questions thus far? I just want to make sure I'm not, because I'm from Michigan. So us Michigan girls, we talk 900 miles an hour. Anybody questions? Anything sound good, bad, anything?
I got a question on inspections and stuff. Like if the buyer, if they come back with a bunch of stuff that needs fixed, you have to get like a licensed person to fix it, or if it's like a do-it-yourself kind of seller, like a guy that likes to do everything himself.
No, that's an awesome question.
So how does that work?
That is the best question ever, I'm telling you.
Because
let me tell you.
I was going to say, because that's how my dad is. My dad built this house himself, and he does everything himself. He doesn't call people.
Well,
so I don't know how it works.
I'm a do-it-myselfer too, just so you know. Okay. First of all, so
yeah,
what you want to do in best protection of your client, which is the buyer, I always put at the very beginning of that little
Yeah.
box, I put have a licensed, or I put licensed, because there's no such thing as a licensed contractor, and you probably know that better than most of us, Josh. But I
Yeah.
put qualified professional. I put licensed/qualified professional.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I put repair/replace the following. And then I put I list everything. You always want to put something.
That's what I just wanted.
Can I jump in on that, Pam?
Absolutely.
So, from the buyer's perspective, like Pam said, put licensed/qualified professional. The seller, like your dad, if he got that from a buyer, that's what he's obligated to do. If he agrees to that, it has to be what the buyer has asked for, unless he negotiates. I can do it myself. Is that okay?
Mhm.
You know, and then the buyer says, all right. Otherwise, he
Yeah.
would be obligated to get a professional. But the flip side is a good listing agent will tell the seller up front if he's like, oh, I'm handy. I built this deck, you know, when they're talking about the house. And then that agent says, then for
Mhm.
sure, you need to have a pre-inspection so that should anything need fixing, you
Mhm.
can do it by yourself and you're not going to get caught up in being asked to have a professional do it.
You also want to be
Okay.
very careful
That's what I was
of
wondering.
verbiage, because Barry can attest to this. He had to save my ass on one of my contracts. You, as the buyer, submit with all that beautiful verbiage that Pam said, you know, qualified professional, and they respond back with what they're going to do, their action. And because you signed it and then none of their action involved a professional doing any of the work, you now just agree to whatever the seller's action is going to do. I've been burned a few times on that because I like to think, oh, the intention is there, but no, not everybody plays in the sandbox very well, and it can come back on you. So just be careful of the verbiage and protecting your client that way.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason I told you guys, make sure you
Okay.
go to the inspection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what Alicia was saying was making sure that what's coming back at you, right, Alicia? Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks, guys. That's beautiful. I'm such a, like I said, I do the job I do because I'm so weird like that. I will pick apart a contract like you ain't never seen nobody. I'm telling you, I will beat that thing up. So again, you know, it's really all in the mindset of, and I've been saying this to some of the new people that I've been talking to. Listen, the best thing you could ever do for your client is read everything that's in front of you. Read every word, the contract, from the contract all the way to the closing statement, because you will pick up more. And I sometimes even read them out loud. I know that's a little weird, but if I'm looking at, like Alicia said, the buyer's response coming back into me, and I read it to myself, and it might make sense. Oh yeah, we're just going to agree to that. But if I read it out loud and I see they haven't put licensed or you know, professional or anything like that, then I'm like, oh my God, no, that's not what we said. What we said was this. So just bear in mind that it take that step back, because Alicia says it really well. Yeah, not everybody plays real nice in the sandbox. So, okay. So are we good on then inspections, or any other questions or input? Okay. So we passed surveying. Now we've got the appraiser coming in and we're giving the appraisal to the lender. We now have, let's give you a scenario real quick. Now we have the appraisal wants some things done, you know, railing, handrail or something like that. Then we got to go back to the listing agent and say, here are the conditions. We used to call them predications, but conditions of the appraisal. And the seller, having signed the contract and agreed to, can do the repairs unless they negotiate something different. I have seen it. So just know that your appraisal isn't just going to go slide into the bank all the time and everything's hunky-dory. Sometimes we have to work a little with appraisals, okay? Just be prepared for that. And, you know, it's a case by case thing. We can't, I'd love to load you guys all up with everything that I've learned over 30 years. It would be my pleasure. And I'm sure experienced agents would love to do the same thing, but we've really got to go just case by case for you. Okay, so now everything's into the lender, goes into underwriting, takes a couple days. comes back out, what we have clear to close. But before that, just before that, there's a period where in the contract we said that, and I believe it's paragraph 9-ish, where it says that we agreed to have the loan commitment or the financing contingency. There was that blank space that Sheila talked to you about where it at least, or is it at least, Sheila, or 10 days? So at minimum 10 days prior to closing. We have to send a letter to the seller or the seller's agent that says, yeah, we have loan commitment. And what loan commitment means is we have cleared the buyer and all of their credit. The property is now cleared. The title is now cleared. And the only thing left is final underwriting and that clear to close I just told you about. So there's that kind of sweet spot right before clear to closing and right after all our docs are in. That's where a loan commitment happens, okay? And that's what your contract is talking about. Okay, so now that we got that, we're gonna set a closing. And once we set and I'm kind of going out of order on the slide, but I'm doing it on purpose. I don't do final walkthroughs before I have a closing set. And you know, I think we spoke earlier that nowadays during Corona and everything, we are talking about that's our set date now as opposed to the on or before that we were used to dealing with. So once I have a closing day, date, and time set, I want to set a closing. It's preferential for everybody. Some people go the morning of closing. Some people go 4 days. You can go up to 4 days per the contract. So if closing on the 10th, you can go on the 6th type thing. What you're looking for is you want to make sure all your repairs are done. You want to make sure the house is in the same condition that it was when you showed the property to begin with. And you want to make sure that they haven't removed anything, because one of my sellers decided to remove every stinking commode in the house. That would be 4. Every sink, every light switch plate. I mean, thank goodness I did a final walkthrough. So final walkthroughs are very, very important for those reasons.
I bought a refrigerator one time.
Oh, I bought a washer and dryer myself. So just saying. So now, once you've done your final walkthrough and everything looks good, you're going to have them sign that document. And we have it for you. I have a bunch of stuff that I was going to put up for it. It just takes so much time. Trying to get you out of here. I've been in class for a long time. Oh, I do have it up handy dandy. Look at me. Yay me. Here's what it kind of looks like. Not kind of, this is it. So, property at this date here is the date that you're filling it out. And this is the property address. And here is where you're putting your contract dated. That's your effective date, okay? So here's your opportunity to say the buyers accept it as, or here's what I found. Mine said missing 4 commodes, 4 vanities, type thing, mirrors off the wall. And then you want to sign this. And if there's something missing, you want to send it to the listing agent. I do it immediately. My standard practice is to, if there's nothing wrong, I don't send it right away. I send it right before closing. So it's I don't know, how do you guys do it? Alicia, Sheila, Barry, how do you guys do it? Do you do it right before closing final walkthroughs, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, like morning of?
Most of the time.
Day before.
I'll either do it the morning of or the day before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it depends on the agent I'm working with too.
Yeah, that's true.
The big thing for me in deciding that is large furniture. I don't want my buyers to do a final walkthrough and large pieces of furniture still haven't been moved out yet, because who knows what's hiding behind them or what damage they might do on the way out.
So true, so true. Yeah,
I've had
so
it where we showed up the day before closing and the sellers, they were getting a divorce and nobody moved. Like all their stuff was still in the house. So we had to push back closing, which ultimately hurt my buyer because their rate was locked in for a certain time. So then they had to pay to keep the rate and all that good jazz. And then most recently, I did a final walkthrough the day before, and stuff that they said that they would complete on the inspection response was not completed. And so it put my buyer in a position of, if I don't close, I'll be homeless. And the seller was like, well, I'm not doing anything else. And so it really just like put them in this position of like do or die, and it was really dirty. And in my opinion, we got it negotiated out, but it did not go in the favor that it should have been, integrity wise, it should have been negotiated in. So
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah. My guy had to run around to Home Depot, run around and buy a whole bunch of commodes and stuff and put all that stuff back. So he was a little disappointed. But, you know, and again, it goes back to, you know, counseling everybody and saying, hey, this is what's expected. Or I think Sheila was saying, I think, you know, meeting the same expectation level. You know, not every listing agent does that. I can tell you, I did not tell him to take the commodes. I'm just saying. So, and also during our final walkthroughs too, I always try to look at, how do I say it? The cleanliness, because really the seller isn't responsible for, you know, super cleaning the house. Just a broom clean is good, but I'm always on the lookout for things like a dirty commode or a dirty refrigerator, because it's nice when your client moves into their new house and it's clean, right? And sometimes I might call the agent and go, hey, you know, your seller's left it kind of dirty. Can we do something about that? You know, and if they won't, and they may not, it gives me the opportunity to call my cleaning lady and just say, hey, can you just run over there and do a quick clean of the refrigerator? Can you just do for my client? You know, that's just that one step above service wise. Okay. That's how I feel about it, but everybody has their own preferences. You know, I should tell you too, going back to inspections really quick, 2 seconds. Don't forget about governmental inspections too. Those happen at the same time, and I'm going to talk to you about them in the next slide, but I just wanted to just bring that up. And also final walkthrough is a good time to see that too. Some of the governmental inspections will leave your certificate of occupancy on the counter. If the seller's already moved out, there's nobody there to get that. So when you got to go do the final walkthrough just to get your certificate of occupancy. So don't you know, so there's so many benefits to the final walkthrough. I can't tell you. I mean, every from every angle. So, all right. Any questions on final walkthroughs? Come on, guys. You're playing nice with Sheila. You're not playing nice with me. I don't know.
You're covering everything beautifully. There's no questions.
I'm just kidding. I don't care. I'm just trying to get y'all out. You know, get you going. All right. Where's Sheila? You coming? Okay. Yay, listing presentation. Yeah, I wasn't even prepared for this. Okay. So bottom line is, any presentation you do to any consumer prior to them becoming a client, you always want to be explaining everything to them, right? Our job is to educate people. You know, I often, I don't know if Ray's on here or not, but she can chime in and say, I have said this to her 1,000 times in the last 2 weeks. Listen, real estate's about a 99% psychology and only 1% salesmanship. I guarantee it. So it is. So when you're going through your presentations, both listing and sellers, you know, you want to make sure that you're explaining everything. What's that?
I said, amen, sister.
Excuse me. So during the listing presentation, there are many important things to mention to the seller. Again, we're reading through the listing agreement. You know, we're talking to them about how you're going to put it in the MLS. And recently, we've got to talk to them about withholding, you know, coming soon. I went to the town meeting yesterday, or town hall meeting yesterday with Tim Dane with the coming soon. There's some, you know, there's some really good stuff going on there. We can still market in the coming soon. We can still show in the coming soon. We just have to market within 24 hours. It's a whole bunch of stuff, you guys, that you might be interested in. And where you find that is on the very first page of Maris when you sign in. I always forget what it's called, darn it. Hold on, let me look. It is called, what's that called? Oh my goodness, I just totally lost that. Where it's the very first, oh goodness. I'll get it later. I'll bring it back to you. Okay, so you can list the property at coming soon, but we also have a hold pattern too. So you wanted to have these discussions with sellers. Sometimes sellers aren't ready to sell. They might have 4,052 mason jars in their basement, like one of my sellers did, that would take 2 weeks to box up. I'm not kidding. It was something like 17 boxes. So guys, I'm just saying, when you're discussing with seller, just say the same things along the same lines that you talk with buyers. Explain the documents, explain how you work, explain how the system works. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to advertise it, we market. Here's how showing time works. Here's how showings work.
The good part about this is, Pam, next week they're going to get their listing presentation and listing agreement, and Rick's going to cover everything down to under contract.
Great.
So we can start it under contract.
Oh, good. That's why I was kind of like breezing by it. Like, you know, just keep explaining stuff. The most important thing is to have an informed client, really, so they can make an informed decision, in my opinion. Okay, so now we got a contract into our seller. We're going to negotiate. It's not what they want. It might be what they want. I always do a seller net out sheet. I do one at listing and one at contract negotiation. And what a seller net out sheet is, just looking at the costs that's going to cost them to close. Okay. So we'll go, you know, going through commission, and one of the things that everybody tends to miss is that in Illinois, taxes are paid in arrears. So when a seller closes, those taxes have to be, I say paid back, but that's not really what it is. The seller gives a credit to the buyer. That's a long explanation, but I just want to note that out to you guys. Remind your sellers they have to give a credit to the buyer for taxes for the years that they lived in the property. As sellers get to the end of closing, and boom, $6,000 in taxes is dug out of their net out that they expected to get 150, they're getting at 144, and that's a huge difference to them sometimes. So bear that in mind. So our contract negotiations, we're going to go through the same steps, right? Only we're doing it from the seller side. Buyer does the inspections, and I always tell sellers, you know, you can be there. I don't think it's necessary. You have to remind them to order their municipality inspections. Like Sheila said, most places it's the seller's responsibility to get those done. And a lot of times that's a really simple one. You know, it's not a thorough investigation of the property. It's just for things safety, you know, hand railings, GFCI plugged, make sure a porch light isn't burnt out, you know, your fence is not falling off type things. What else? I can't think of anything else, but let's see. Where were we at? Oh yeah. Municipalities. Anybody got any questions about municipality inspections? Okay. Appraisal, title, and survey operates pretty much the same way. When you're explaining it to the seller, how I explain to the seller really quickly, so the appraiser is going to give an opinion. You can be here if you want. Nobody knows your home better than you do. However, what I would suggest is just let the appraiser ask you questions. If at any time you have made an improvement he or she does not note, you can say, I improved this. I updated the bathroom. I updated the kitchen, something like that. But I try to keep the sellers, you know, relaxed about everything, you know, just real chill. Appraisal, title, same thing, going to be ordered that at the beginning. We're going to clear the property. We're going to clear you and the buyer. Same thing with survey, if it's land. On the seller's side of loan commitment, while this is all happening simultaneously, you know, as a listing agent, you still want to be on the ball with loan commitment. What I mean by that is, if after a few, say a week, I don't know, what would you guys say a week or so, if you don't hear from an appraiser for the appraisal appointment, I'd be calling the buyer's agent and saying, hey, I haven't heard from the appraisal guy, because again, that can back you up. So that might be a consideration. Settlement statement. Okay, so remember we said we did that net out, which I think Sheila, you'll probably talk about a net out, yeah? Yeah, for sure. Okay, so when you're doing that net out, so now your settlement statement comes in. That's prepared by the title company, and it goes through every cost that the seller is going to have, and the buyer, as a matter of fact. What they call that now is an ALTA. I don't know if you guys learned about that in school, or they used to call it HUD, but it's ALTA now. And it goes through commission, taxes, any invoices, repairs. What it basically does is show the seller what they will walk away with once they sign the documents. Pretty much it. So you should probably get that a couple of 4 days in advance, it should be. And the final walkthrough after that, how I prepare myself is just say, make sure the house is clean. Get all your stuff out. Be ready to go. You have to be out at closing or whatever you negotiate. That's it. And then go to closing. Everybody signs. So the difference between the two closings, just really quick, just a fun tip. So as a buyer's agent at a closing, it's about an hour. As a seller's agent at a closing, it's about 30 minutes, maybe 25, 30 minutes. They have less to sign. So just kind of a fun little note whenever anyone's asking you, because that's a common question I get as a transaction manager. How long is my closing going to be? It's going to be an hour if it's a buyer, minimally. So, all right. All right. Lay it on me, girls. Lay it on me, folks. That's it. That's all I got.
Lay it on me, girls. I'm offended.
I said, lay it on me, girls. Lay it on me, folks.
Great job.
Liar. But I love that you're a liar.
You were efficient.
What's that?